the live button, hopefully the feed starts kicking in. So for those listening, just so you know, this is a Nintendo podcast, so I welcome all of you. I don't know if we were cut off or not, but yeah, we do this every 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights. This time I am joined by Dumo from DumoPlays. His channel is linked in the description below. How you doing, man? Welcome back.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, bro. Always. And Brandon is here as well. What About Nintendo? His channel is also linked in the description below.
Hey guys, well.
So, today what we're going to be talking about is the Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase situation. What's going on with the Direct? What happened last week? Why were the rumors wrong? We're getting into all of that. Talk about it. We'll tell you guys what we think and all of that, of course. We're also getting into some rumors for a Monster Hunter game that could be coming to Switch. Also, a little bit about Astral Chain, the possibility of that as well, because Hideki Kamiya perhaps teased it or perhaps just trolled us. We will get into that as well. And the other big thing that we're going to be focusing on this time around is the Switch revision rumors. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I guess there's kind of like 4 main topics there. Will there be timestamps this time? I don't know. Brandon, if you have the opportunity...
I'm not doing that right now.
That's fine. I will, I don't know. The thing is, this is kind of all, like, correlated with each other, so it's hard to... We'll see what happens. But, I'm not even sure where to start. I guess, hello? What's up, guys? I'll check in with the chat right now. Almighty Savage Animator, hello there. Benjamin, hello. Colton Rowe, hey. Anime Dreamer, what's going on? So, Duncan McLaughlin, please let there be a re what? I don't know. A Nintendo
Obviously,
Direct. Please let there be a Nintendo Direct. Ah, I see. Yeah. I would like to see that as well. I guess we'll dive into the topic everyone wants to really talk about, and we'll get into the other cool stuff later on. But I'll just say straight up, I know people are upset. Like, it's not even just like with like my videos. It's kind of like every content creator or anyone who talks about Nintendo that was kind of talking about the possibility of there being some sort of cool thing happening last week. You see it in the comments. You see that a lot of fans are disappointed, and a lot of people are making the argument that we should maybe not even like hype people up and things of that nature. And maybe there is some adjustments to be made there. Like, I'm not going to be arrogant and say that maybe I couldn't have done things slightly differently. So I will be reassessing that. But I'll also say that, like, every time when it seems like we're getting a buildup of evidence or something, this year it's been disappointing. Like, this year, in terms of our expectation, it's been continually lowered. Like, I felt like...
Right.
When we were talking about this supposed Direct that was going to happen, I already felt like my expectations had been dropped significantly. And even then, there was quite a bit of a letdown. But I feel like a lot of that has more to do with timing rather than what content is coming this year, if that makes sense. Like, I think the kind of content that we've been talking about to be coming is still happening. So, like, in terms of, like, our predictions and expectations for what's to happen in the year, I don't think it's going to be that much different from what's actually going to turn out, even at this point. But in terms of when we're going to get that news, obviously it's different because we were hoping to get news last Friday and that didn't happen. So there's definitely that, but I also want to point out that, like, at least personally, I try to say, hey, look, this is a rumor. Take it with a grain of salt. We don't know if it's going to happen, even if it's like something that is from a credible leaker. And I do think that these people that we've been talking about, like Captain Tsubasa, Dref Grubb, Nate Drake, are these people, they have inside information. I feel like they've proven that over time. But the problem is that when you're talking about things that haven't been announced yet, even if it's based off real information or a trusted source, we don't know what happens because plans change, things get canceled. It's a fluid process. So that's why until something's officially announced, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. You just gotta.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
For me personally, it's kind of on the line of, like, some people complain about non-family friendly, like, content creators and stuff, and they're like kids watching. It's like, bro, you gotta police yourself. At the end of the day, like, sure, maybe, like, I'm sure some content creators are going out there just spewing wrong information or just hyping things up way past anything that anything suggests. But for most of us, we're just telling you what we're hearing. We're not saying that like the direct to end all directs was gonna be this Friday, no matter what, 100%. You know,
I was
it's like you gotta
hoping.
keep your hype in check yourself. Well, it's not really up to us to make sure that you're keeping your hype levels where they are. As long as we're presenting the information in a way that's not false, or misleading purposely. I don't think there's really an issue. I think if you decide to take that information and decide that for sure 100% everything that we ever talked about is gonna be true and it's gonna be amazing, that's kind of your business. Like, we didn't tell you to believe that. In fact, we told you not to believe that. So if you still believe it, that's not really our fault, you know? We can't do anything about that.
As with everyone else, we're doing the best we can with the information we get. And our information is limited, as is everyone else's. So when we get information from a credible source, like some of the stuff we're going to end up talking about today, we're going to discuss it. Because to be perfectly honest, we talk about news, we talk about games, it's what we do.
Yeah, it's what we do. We enjoy it. It's what we love.
And this is what we have to talk about right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
sure,
If we didn't talk about this,
the
there'd be...
next gen.
Go on.
We could talk about the next gen launches, but there's nothing there.
On a Nintendo podcast?
We could talk about the next direct. There's nothing there. Like we're talking about what we're getting and what we think is going to happen. Like, let's be honest, this has been a weird year. It's been a very weird year. It's weird for us.
Yeah.
It's weird for the companies. I have a feeling Nintendo doesn't want to announce things too far out and then have to keep going back. Like, it's okay if they have to delay a game every now and again, but they don't want to announce like 15 games and then delay 15 games. So
Yeah.
I think they're waiting until really close to. It's like, okay, we can launch next week. All right, let's tell them about it. Is sort of how they've been.
I do think they're waiting a little bit longer than they have to. I think Nintendo's just a cautious company in general, sometimes overly so. I think by now they probably know pretty much what games are going to be able to come out this year. Like, there's only a few months left. If you don't know, what are you doing? What are you going to delay the game like 2 weeks before it comes out? Like, that's what? I do think they're being a little overly cautious at this point. Obviously, I don't have all that information, so maybe there's something that we don't know about that's keeping them from it. It's just, you know, when I try to make sense of it from the information that I understand, it feels like Nintendo at this point, like by now, I do think like a couple months ago for sure, or even as late as like last month, there could be things that could be changed. But I think like by now, they should know what's going on for the end of the year.
And then they got to figure out their marketing campaign, how they're going to work around with the third-party games and the like everything else, and how they actually want to present it. And
I think the biggest thing is
want to start with, well, let's just drop everything right now.
Yeah.
Throw everything out there and then just see how the rest of the year goes. Like they like to, especially in the Switch generation, they really like to play with their marketing. They really like to try to build hype. So, and again, starving people builds hype. You can starve people, drop one announcement, people go nuts over it, and it's like, okay, that worked out.
It seems like that they're playing right now. They don't really. I don't think that there's going to be a lot coming out this year. I think it'll be okay, but I don't think. I think if they showed a direct and was like, "This is everything coming out this year," fans would be like, "That's it? That's all?
Yeah.
That's a short direct."
I feel like they're going to lean on third parties this year.
I mean, they already have been third parties and remasters and stuff.
I have
Andres, your face. Yes, I know.
But there is like this was something that they actually talked about a couple years ago. Like this is when people were freaking out over, oh, there's no third party. We were told to wait.
But here's my problem with that. The third parties we're getting are not like big third party releases. These are like, we got like 3 back-to-back rhythm games to start this partner showcase. Rhythm games are great.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say rhythm games are bad. It's all about context here. But if the first third of your entire presentation, maybe more, I have to check the timestamps, is just the rhythm games, that's not great. Like, hear me out. I think what we got in that partner showcase wasn't bad, and none of that there was terrible. I think there were some things I kind of noticed. Was like, oh, okay, you know, I am somewhat interested in Jump Force, even though the initial Jump Force, before the definitive edition or deluxe version, the reviews were terrible. It was like 4 out of 10s and stuff on Metacritic. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, that
very
game
poorly
was not
reviewed
polished when it first launched.
So that was one of the games that stuck out to me just because I'm an anime fan, right? There was this boxing game which seems interesting, but at the same time also looks like a very low budget kind of thing. And then there is a lot.
It does look like an actually good boxing game, which is kind of rare.
Right, it might be fun.
2K making such shit.
It looks really good though.
Yeah, that had caught my attention. I'm definitely somewhat interested in that. And then there is the rhythm games. There's a Kingdom Hearts one, which I guess is the big one, kind of cool. And then you have Puyo Puyo Pop Tetris 2, the sequel to
Puyo Tetris 2.
I said it a lot.
Really?
I know.
Like it's a big game, and then you have like Just Dance again. A lot of people are gonna scoff at that, but that is it is a big announcement.
All of those
things
games
sell. They make a lot of money.
Right.
It's just not for me.
Right.
Yeah, I like how you say a lot of
money.
people will scoff right after I immediately say, "Oh God," to your statement about Just Dance.
Yeah.
I literally just scoffed.
The big
at
problem
it.
with that to me is that the people watching a Nintendo Direct or the partner showcase, whatever they want to call it, people watching those directs aren't watching it going, "Oh God, I hope they show Just Dance."
No.
You know, like
Very few people.
not-
Yeah.
usually the people that are watching, like, there's a lot of people that like them. That like it's a big franchise. Like it's gonna sell a lot. It's gonna make a lot of money. They do very well. It's well done. But the people watching those are usually people that are a little bit more invested into other kinds of games. Like I feel like that's a very different game from what most people are looking for. It's even very different when it comes to like rhythm games. So I don't know. I don't feel like there's a lot of people super hyped at that moment. Like there's going to be a lot of people super excited for the game, very happy it got announced. But would they be watching the direct?
I don't know if anybody's super excited about a Just Dance game. I mean, that's like being super excited for Madden. Like you knew it was coming. You don't get hyped about a Madden announcement. You're like, oh, okay.
But people
It's
do.
like I knew about it.
Because it's, yes, you knew about it, but
Why?
just like Call of Duty, you knew it was coming. But what's
You'll
it
get
going to
excited by Call of Duty these days.
Look.
It's gonna look like the same thing it looked like last year. Like at least Call of Duty looks different a little bit. Like Just Dance looks literally the exact same as it's always looked.
But people
So does
always
Madden.
get excited for it. Like it's the people that play them, they get excited for them. They want the roster update. They want to see it change, how the physics have changed, how the AI's improved, how like it's it's there. Like people get excited for it.
I mean, yeah, it's a thing. I feel like that.
I think we all can agree.
I mean, it's a niche. I feel like this direct was a niche audience direct. It was towards that kind of like lower budget, third party kind of audience, which there definitely is. It's just
right. All the games there were
for most people.
Right. All the games there were definitely appealing to people. They're definitely it's not that I don't want them to be on the system. All those games matter. Some of those games I might even want to play or get for sure. But
I would probably not get any of them. But
maybe if they're discounted. Point is that there's definitely some people who are interested in the Kingdom Hearts rhythm game. There's definitely some people who want Puyo Tetris 2, right? Like there are those people who want that. Those games are gonna sell. They do deserve to have some attention. The problem is that when we're talking about like that core Nintendo fan base, Nintendo has done. I don't. If you guys watch me, you know I usually am that negative, but I'm gonna use this adjective. Terrible. Like they've done a terrible job of like appealing to the core Nintendo fan base this year, and I think it's unfortunate. And I think a lot of it has to simply do with the pandemic. Like I'm not saying that we should like really be really hard on Nintendo here. It just kind of when you compare this year to previous years, we would have known about games to have been excited about, and this year we don't. Like this week we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary for Astral Chain 2. What do we have instead for Astral Chain this year? Nothing. Like there's nothing. And then we would have gone like Fire Emblem 3 Houses like the month beforehand, and then the month before that was Mario Maker 2 last year, right? Like there was all these great games coming out during this time this year. Right now we have nothing. We have the largest window of no Nintendo published games throughout the entire system's life cycle. That's what we're going through right now. So it's just kind of like a really stark contrast to the previous years. So I think fans had this expectation that we would know a lot more about games that were exciting to the core Nintendo fan base, and it's not there. So there's that disappointment. And I'm disappointed with what we've gone so far, because I thought we would have more news. I still think Nintendo's going to have some stuff to close out the year. We do know we're getting Pikmin 3 Deluxe. It has some new content in there. I'm excited about that. But at this point, it is starting to look like we're not going to get anything else until Pikmin 3 Deluxe. And maybe Nintendo has something for November, maybe December, maybe. I feel like, I guess my issue is that I've had these expectations and they've been getting kind of worse throughout the year. And now I have this hope that, okay, doesn't look like we're getting anything in September now. We didn't get anything for August either. We're going to October. Should I have a hope that we somehow get something for early in October besides Pikmin 3 Deluxe and Cadence of Hyrule, the re-release for that game? I'm starting to think no. So I think for sure something's come out in November. Like, I don't care how bad the year gets until it's going to have something in November. Like, if I think the fact that Pikmin 3 Deluxe was announced for October confirms that there's something else for November. Because if the year was really, really bad, like let's say like Nintendo wasn't unable to get anything out, they would have taken something like Pikmin 3 Deluxe and at least put that in November to have something to come out during the holiday time. But the fact that they have at least Pikmin 3 coming out in October, that shows that they have something to come out in November, because November is the best selling period of the year. So they're going to have something come out then. At this stage, assuming the Mario remasters are real, that's probably what's going to come out then, I bet. And I hope something else comes out in December. I hope, but it's tricky.
They still have a Zelda to release. They want it to be an annual. We've already been teased Skyward Sword remake. That's what I would kind of expect out of this year.
Yeah.
And again, it's a weird lineup seeing Nintendo go into the holidays banking off of remakes, remasters, like essentially a port possibly, like. But again,
Right.
I think the worst of it is I think this was somewhat planned, going back a few years towards the launch. As I said, when the system launched, people were complaining that there wasn't enough third party. Now, I couldn't find the actual article that I wanted, but I did find one from Reggie, where he basically said games coming out now have been built for the Switch. There weren't a lot of developers making stuff for the system. Wait 2 to 3 years, and you'll start seeing a lot more third parties as the games being made with the system in mind will start releasing. That drops us about now and next year. There was another comment. I can't remember who made it, and I couldn't find the article, which is driving me nuts because I've looked for it a couple times now. Nintendo said their goal with the Switch coming in the opening years was to build an install base, a large install base, so that it would entice third parties to come, and so that when the third parties were releasing games, they would have people to sell them to.
Can you send me the Reggie quote on Twitter so I can maybe put it up on the stream if possible?
Yeah. Give me a sec.
I do recall the quote you're talking about. Like, I remember that being a thing. Honestly, I don't think there will ever be I don't think there will ever be a point where the Switch gets good third-party support like PS4 and Xbox One does. I think it's just too much work for most developers, and for the install size, third-party games don't really sell super well on Switch compared to how their first-parties sell. Like, it's not even close. Like, it's way lower than their first-party stuff, or even their, like, some indie games outsell third-party games. Like, let's be honest. I think yes, there's an audience for people who want to take games on the go, but most people don't want to pay $60 for a game that released like 2 years ago that's worse than the version they've already played.
So
so they can play it on the go.
I want to put out a couple things. One, we're being a little pessimistic now, myself included. Maybe I might even be the most negative right now. I might sound that way. I just want to make it clear that, like, I think the partner showcase, what was there was some interesting stuff, and I think it appeals to certain people, but at the same time, I don't think that's enough to appeal to the core Nintendo fan base, hence all the fallout and negativity you've seen on the internet lately, guys. But I'll also say that, there's definitely there's some value to that partner showcase, but I think Nintendo needs to do more, but at the same time, like, maybe they can't do more. Maybe the reason why we are not getting news from them isn't because they're just taking a really long time to give us the news. Maybe there isn't any news to give us. Like, maybe it's that bad. I think that's possible. I'm not saying that's my expectation, but I feel like at this stage, like, we keep wondering, like, why is Nintendo taking so long to give us information about what's to come? Maybe the reason is because there isn't really anything good to talk about until later. So they're really just kind of waiting it out. Like, my expectation for when we do get this big Nintendo Direct, if there is one, is that it'll probably, hypothetically speaking, okay? I'm not saying this is going to happen in September, okay? But Jeff Grubb is saying something is coming in September in equivalent to a Direct. That's what he said. If that's true, let's just hypothetically say it's a Direct, like a real full Direct. Let's just say. That would be great. But I wouldn't expect it to be like, all right, guess what? Skyward Sword HD, Mario Remasters, Bravely Default 2, No More Heroes, a Smash character. Like, maybe I would want all that there. But it wouldn't surprise me if most of the exciting stuff in that Direct has to do with things coming out after 2020. Like, they might use, like, half of the content in that Direct might be for things to close out the year, but the other half will be about building up the first half of 2021. So that's what my sort of expectation for the next Direct, if there is one. We haven't gone one since last September in terms of a full Direct here. Some people speculate that it might even be the end of a Direct. I'm not sure if I agree with that, because if that was the case, then maybe they would stop. They wouldn't be using the Direct branding then.
Yeah,
if there wasn't going to be a return of the Direct.
They did say that they were reevaluating Directs, and they thought that I think it might have been the last investors meeting. They were talking about they were saying that the Directs have basically they essentially said that they'd run their course, and that they believe that they could use Directs in a different way going forward, and to expect them being used differently. Partner Showcase was probably
I remember it a little differently. I remember
whether they're not going to do a full Direct, we don't know, but we've also seen them 2 games this year just drop trailers on YouTube, Twitter, and that's their show off.
But to be fair, those were the only 2 games that have released this year, and typically you get 10 to 20.
So what you're saying though is that they're currently batting 100% for 1,000, but they're currently 100% of their games have been just dropped since saying
right. I think the changes, in my opinion, I think they want to change what content is shown in which Directs, which perfectly aligns with what they've been doing. They introduced indie Directs a couple years ago, and now they have these partner showcase Directs. I think they just want to split up when they announce things, because a lot of times, like, these third-party games that we've been talking about, there is an audience for them. People are excited about them, but they're niche games. They don't need to be in a general Direct where most people are just sitting there going, "Oh my God, why is this game here? Move on."
But how many niche games are in a Direct that take up time of the Direct? Is it really worth it for them to drop a Direct and say, "Here's 3 games"?
So I want to pull up what Nintendo said in reference to the future of Directs.
Okay, perfect.
This is from the Video Games Chronicle. Hopefully, it pops up here. This is not too long from now. Right, we feel Nintendo Directs are an incredibly effective way to present information directly to our customers in a very straightforward way. Inversely, times change, and so does the most effective way to promote products. So there is a chance that a new, better way to present this information comes about. So we always like to examine all the possible ways to communicate this information to customers. So that's what I remember hearing in terms of when Nintendo was questioned about the change of it. So from what I understand, Nintendo Directs will still sort of maintain, but they are reassessing it, and we have seen changes this year. I think some of those changes are temporary changes because of the situation. I think the shadow drops have more to do with E3 being canceled and things of that nature. I think the partner showcase is something that may continue to happen. I think Nintendo's going to have to tweak it though, because just look at the like to dislike ratios for the last 2 partner showcases. Both of them are abysmal. That doesn't happen with Nintendo presentations. They're usually just very an extreme amount of likes and very minimal dislikes. There's definitely not a lot of, it's not being well received right now. but I think part of that isn't so much the partner showcases themselves are bad. They're not great, I'll say that, but I think it's because we don't have like the Nintendo information that everyone wants. I think once that starts coming, people will be more open to the partner showcases.
It's because it's a niche thing, but it's being presented as the only thing we have.
Yeah,
which isn't really the point.
I feel like the partner showcases are a lot better than being given credit. That first partner showcase was actually a lot bigger than people gave credit to.
Showing My Tensei is huge, right? My
other games too, like
Rogue
Company is big.
Rogue Company is a big deal.
It's really good. They've got Dr. Disrespect making a map for them publicly right now. Like they're doing really well. I've played the game. The game is good. Okay. The game is a lot of fun. But again, it's the lack of where's Breath of the Wild 2? Like people want Breath of the Wild 2, Metro Prime 4, Mario Odyssey 2. Like that's what people want right now. And the way this year has gone and the way people are all stir crazy, it's show us that or we're going to hate it. Seems to be what happens. Oh, as well as where's the next Smash Fighter? You didn't even show the Smash Fighter. And it's like
it's for all that. Here's the thing. So I'll just tell you what I like straight up. I think there is gonna be like sooner or later Nintendo is gonna give us information about stuff. Like we are gonna have to get a Smash character soon. Like they have to make an announcement at this point. They have to make an announcement about that soon, right? So that has to come. Assuming these listings for Breath of the Wild 2 are legitimate, and there's been several coming up, you got to think that if again, listings don't necessarily mean anything, but when there's like several, it starts to paint a picture of, hey, is something already established behind the scenes, and does that mean an announcement for is coming soon? I'm hoping there's a major direct this September that talks about Breath of the Wild 2 in 2021. I'm hoping the Mario remasters are announced really soon as well. All these different things, like assuming it's all legitimate, like that has to be announced soon, and I think it makes more sense for it to be announced together as opposed to little by little. Is it possible that Nintendo will just kind of stick with this strategy of just kind of shadow dropping one little thing at a time? I think, but I feel like when you look at the fan base right now, you look at the poor reception of the partner showcase, I think at a certain point Nintendo's going to have to tell us more than just one little thing every month and a half. I think there has to be more than that. And I think we're getting to that point. So if September goes, though, if we pass through September, at that point I'm going to start thinking, okay, we probably won't get a direct till like January. But so that's kind of my hope. I'm hoping something happens in September. If not, then I'm just kind of giving up on the year. What it's going to be, it's just like they'll just drop trailers when something's about a month or so away, and then they'll, we'll just wait a few more months for something else, which I don't think is a great way to give us information, because we have nothing to look forward to. We don't know what we're really investing in, like here's the thing, like right now at this point, if let's say you're trying to decide which company you're going to invest your money in, via either Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo, what we know about for Nintendo's holiday is Pikmin 3 Deluxe. And then we have the Xbox and the PlayStation coming out this year. And admittedly, those aren't... Well, Sony's is actually looking kind of solid, because apparently Demon's Souls is launch window, Ratchet and Clank is launch window. Both those games look amazing. And Miles Morales is coming out at launch. That looks pretty strong. Microsoft's a different situation because Halo Infinite was delayed, but they still have Game Pass. I would still argue that they both have better, more compelling... Sony's at the best, is looking the best right now. Microsoft is not looking great, but I would still say that it's looking like they have a more exciting holiday coming up than Nintendo, because all they have right now is Pikmin 3 Deluxe. I don't think Nintendo can go much longer with that being the case, unless that is the case. Like, if it really is the case that it's only Pikmin 3 Deluxe, then okay, that's all you got. I get it. But if they have more than that, how much longer can they go with just announcing just one thing every month and a half, when everyone knows about the other good stuff coming up for the other companies? Like, people are going to start investing in those other companies, pre-ordering in those other companies. So I feel like Nintendo has to make an announcement sooner or later, unless there really is nothing.
Well, Microsoft right now doesn't really have much. They just canceled their big launch title. But either way, they're going.
But I mean, they're Microsoft. They have like one big game, and that's it.
Yeah, they don't
But
sell
they
on their
have
first party
other
games usually.
Put together a fairly large number of studios right now, first party. They've acquired a lot in the last few years.
And a lot of that is
Blade 2. I don't know when they're planning on launching that, but that game is something I'm very looking forward to. Like that's the first game.
I think the problem is with Microsoft is they acquired these studios like a year or two ago. They don't have time to make full-length games for the launch of the next-gen system. Like they've had like 2 years. Yeah, the smaller ones, but like major ones aren't gonna. You're not gonna get that Fable. Like
they have a lot coming down the road, but they don't really have anything right now. But do you honestly think that they're not going to sell out everything they have on launch day?
I mean,
like
of course they
Switch launched with one game, and yeah, sure, it was Breath of the Wild, but people still said that you couldn't launch with that, and they wouldn't sell their 2 million systems day one.
Yeah,
they did easily
because people don't.
Microsoft could launch with nothing but Games Pass and say this is what we have coming in the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah. Literally, like, have you met the PlayStation 4, my friend?
It's going to sell out. Like, it will sell out. That's just how it is.
But here's the thing, though. The key to that is that Microsoft's at least giving people reason to invest in the system because they know things are coming. Right now, Nintendo isn't doing... Like, there's everything that's already established on the Switch, which is great. But after a certain point, you're going to need new stuff, too. And Nintendo's taking a really long time to give fans something to look forward to. Like, after a certain point, it's going to start making an impact on them sales-wise. I don't know if it's happened yet. I'm not an analyst in terms of sales. But after a certain point, you got to think that's going to start impacting them.
The other thing we got to think about is what's going on with the other two right now is that they're playing a game of chicken as to who's going to announce the price for.
Well, what if maybe they're all playing chicken
on that game? They're like they're waiting for... It's like, here's the prices. Nintendo goes, here's our big holiday title. It just as a way to...
Yeah, it may be the case.
But at the same time, it's kind of hurting them right now. But
they did make announcements very close to the other two, like their big next gen events back in like June, July, when they had those. Like they had announcements like right after both times.
Yeah, like that's the other interesting thing. It does seem like their announcements are reactive because they just kind of happen randomly. So it's a very interesting point, guys. It's a good theory that Nintendo is just playing chicken as well.
It's not a good plan. They haven't been doing good.
I don't think. Well, I mean, they are.
That might be their plan.
They have, because if they don't have a lot, they can't drop a lot, and they have to hold on to those announcements. So if they want to play this game, say they had 20 games for the last 6 months of the year. They could drop a few in a direct and then hold back a couple big ones for announcements for this little game they're playing. But if they only have 5 or 6 for the like last half of the year,
100% what they have.
You can't drop like 5 of them and then hope one will be able to play after both announcements from the other systems.
I think
because they're going to want to really closely timed, or else you're going to lose all the money from those pre-sales. Are just going to happen immediately, and you will not get any money off of that.
I think Nintendo's actually in danger of not having the most successful holiday. It's not a prediction. I'm not saying I expect Nintendo to do worse than Sony. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if they don't have some compelling announcements soon, I think Sony will have a better holiday season than Nintendo.
I mean, it wouldn't be surprising, honestly. I think the only thing is if the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X can get enough stock. That's the only question. Like, if they can get enough stock, they can outsell Nintendo any day. They're launching a new system. It's going to sell.
Like, but they can't.
Because
they're also fighting each other for stock.
Yeah.
That's a good point, but I want to say that for Sony, it's not just the PS5, though. They've had more high-quality games coming out this year than Nintendo. Like, Sony's been beating out Nintendo in terms of first-party stuff this year. I'm a hardcore Nintendo fan, and I can admit that. They've had a lot of really awesome exclusives come to the PlayStation. Final Fantasy VII Remake. I know it's more of a timed exclusive, but it's still exclusive for the system right now. Last of Us 2. That's there. There's Ghost of Tsushima. I'm pretty sure it's like another major game that came out earlier this year as well. That's just kind of like
Dreams. They had Dreams that came out. That was a pretty big first party game.
Not too long ago. And there's also that smaller game that it's not. I'm not sure it's something that it's out available on PC, but it's not available on Xbox or Switch right now. The
Fall
Fall
Guys?
Guys.
Ah, yeah.
That thing is, oh my god,
Oh,
that
and-
thing is blowing up.
And here's another really
That's
cool
cool.
thing.
But still,
This is another really cool thing that popped up on Twitter today. Well, I saw it on Twitter today. It's like a spiritual successor to Jet Force Gemini, and guess what it's available for? Not Xbox, not Nintendo, PC and PlayStation. So, you know, let me see if I can show it to you guys here. Yeah, there it is. It's in Tamarin. Have you guys seen it?
I have not. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna put it on the stream, but that's probably not gonna do it justice.
Don't worry, we'll see in about 10 minutes.
But like, it looks like this cute. It looks like this really cute and cuddly game, but when you see the footage, you're like, oh, those are the aliens from Jet Force Gemini. Like that's a really cool thing. If you played Jet Force Gemini back in the day, it's a really cool thing. The game looks awesome.
Never played it.
Yeah. Point is, there's just a lot of other little games like this that may be available on PC as well, but are coming to PlayStation, not Switch or Xbox. Point is that I just think this year, Sony is doing a really good job in terms of having compelling games. While I'll say that, at least for me, like for my tastes, Nintendo isn't doing as great of a job. And I'm a hardcore Nintendo fan. I play mostly Nintendo. I'm just, I think Nintendo hasn't had the best year. It's kind of up and down. Sony has good years, Nintendo has great years. It's up and down. Like maybe next year,
Yeah,
Nintendo's gonna have a really amazing year, and Sony's gonna be kind of slow. Like that's possible.
We keep talking about the fact that the Switch seems to have like good years on and off. Like they'll have a good year and then kind of a slow year, and then another really good year and then a slow year. I mean, it's kind of the same with the Sony. In 2018, they came out with God of War and Spider-Man and a bunch of big games. In 2019 was just kind of like, it was okay. And now 2020, they come out with a bunch of big games. It's kind of like they're in the opposite cycle of Nintendo, where like 2018 was kind of slow, but 2019, 2017 were big for them.
the one advantage that they have is that they do have big games that are going to sell every year that aren't made by them. So you have your EA sports games.
Yeah.
Like FIFA.
Call of Duty, Cold War.
Money.
It's coming.
Yep.
It's not coming to Switch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And all those games sell a ton of money. So like that keeps them going. Like Sony's done a great job building the platform, and they've done it year in, year out. They've done it through multiple generations. They have a great platform.
They've always been good at that.
And it is what it is. And Nintendo, their platforms have been up and down, and they've gone through like a little bit of an identity crisis trying to figure out what they want to do and who they want to be in the industry.
Sony's been a lot more consistent. Bearing in mind the beginning of the PS3 generation, they've been really good every single generation. And the PS3 ended up outselling the Xbox 360 in the end, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
At the end of it, like it did win that generation as far as sales go. Like they are doing a fantastic job at Sony, and they do have their off years, but people don't freak out about it because you still have your Call of Duties, you still have your sports games, you still like all of that stuff is coming. It's coming. It has to come because the other companies rely on that specifically. They get pretty much every major third-party game. Like name a
Usually first
third-party game that they didn't get. A really good one that Switch got was Marvel Ultimate Alliance. They didn't get that, but at the same
Nintendo
time,
gets those little like
they showed off
exclusive third parties.
Like they showed off their answer to it, which is a bigger, prettier game that's probably, to be honest, gonna have less content for years on end until they can catch up. But it looks pretty, so people are gonna flock to that.
It's a bigger budget title.
Phenomenal, by the way, but it's not what people want to see. And Nintendo published that one, so they had to pay for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, like I just think Nintendo has been keeping their cards close to their chest. They've very clearly been impacted by the pandemic. What's kind of head scratching to me is that repeatedly throughout the year they have told their investors everything is fine. our plans for the fiscal year are all going according to plan. All of our software is planned.
100%
So
do not believe that.
what's so strange about that is that how can you say that with a straight face, and then we're going through the longest drought without a Nintendo published game ever for the Switch cycle. The period between Paper Mario and Pikmin 3 Deluxe is going to be the longest period. And since the Mario remasters haven't been announced now, unless it's like announced like tomorrow in a trailer and coming at the end of September, this is going to be the longest drought ever for the Switch. So, you know, I just think it's strange. It's hard to really figure out what's going on with Nintendo.
Can you say anything else, though? If it was your business and you were looking at your investors, would you tell them, we've got nothing? Like we are toast this year.
So here's the thing:
and
they did
have
say
all back out your company's stock plummet. Like you can't do that.
but they can't lie either.
You have to look them in the eye and say everything is fine and we've got this planned and things are going to be good. Even if you have just one game to sell, you have to do it. And maybe they'll lose faith in you. But if you, again, it's like, oh, you lose faith. Oh, we get into next year. Maybe vaccine comes. Things are looking a little better. And you go, Breath of the Wild 2 trailer. And then
that kind of brings
bad as they are, you're back.
That brings me to my point, though, right? So right now things are slow. I think once everything's said and done, like I think they do plan to close out the fiscal year strong. So the fiscal year ends this March. At the end of March 2020 is when it all ends. If you guys have been paying attention to my channel, I mean, you probably agree with it. Like my hope theory, is that both this Switch revision, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and Breath of the Wild 2 could be launching alongside of each other for this March. That will close out the fiscal year. That'll give them really strong sales. Let's say they get Mario remasters in November, and they have a couple other little things like for December, January, February. Like that all together could close out the year strong, and in combination with what happened with Animal Crossing and all that in the first part of the fiscal year, that'll be fine, and their investors will be like, okay, you guys did good enough.
I think Nintendo realizes that they can afford to completely drop the ball in 2020. Like, just, like, leave. Literally, maybe even not even a single game. Like, they could literally afford to not release a single game this year, and then just come into 2021 and just be like, here, game. You know, Breath of the Wild 2, new Switch revision, maybe Mario Odyssey 2 releases next year. Mario Kart 9 is also a possibility. Who knows? You know, big releases in 2021, everything will be forgiven instantly. Because the Switch, and it sells really well, and people are, like, Nintendo's in a better light now. It's not the Wii U generation where they have to be on the ball 100% of the time.
And they can kind of get away with it.
Even then, people still hate on them.
True.
Well, the Wii U, like, so many people didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
I didn't, like, again, like, I was a weird time.
I didn't know it was a thing until, like, 2014.
But, like, you know, like I didn't know what it was when it came out, and I wasn't really paying attention. I had my kids, and like I missed a lot, but I didn't know it existed.
Wow.
Which is pretty bad as someone who has played Nintendo for a very long time. And then like this year, it's just like they could go through this, like they have enough, they could stop. They could not release anything else this year, and the quarterlies would look terrible. But the fiscal year would look great because
of how well things went.
Animal Crossing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like they like, again, it's very rare for a system that's been out for a few years to run out of stock in the middle of the year. That's a Christmas thing. That's a holiday thing. That's a launch year thing. That's not a 3-4 year into the system thing. You know, the only other time we saw something weird like that was Pokemon Sun and Moon, when it
I was about to say the 3DS had a couple 3DS times stock. Where the stock would drop on that one.
This isn't supposed to happen. It's not normal.
No.
And again, supply chain was a little bit of a problem, and because of the year. But again, they were selling. They were dropping crazy numbers. They were going up year on year. Like that's not normal. Not just like by a little bit. They were like really jumping year on year. Like this isn't supposed to happen, especially when you're not releasing a ton of games like Animal Crossing.
By all accounts, this year the sales should be terrible, like absolutely horrendous. They should be so low.
But not.
No, well, it's perfect.
became the
storm
Which
of
is
things.
it's almost scary because I wonder if Nintendo looks at that and goes, oh, it doesn't matter what we do with the Switch. It will sell anyways. Please don't think that, Nintendo. It's not true.
I don't think I think they got really lucky. For starters, they delayed Animal Crossing, which is supposed to come out
Oh god, that saved
the
them
holiday
so
the year
much.
before. So think about this. They were supposed to have Animal Crossing out the year before. That would have come and gone. Probably had some competing sales with Pokemon, which was not in the greatest of light. They would have fought each other a little bit. And then you get into the pandemic and you got nothing.
Well, here's the thing.
That would mean the only original
Hold
game
on.
that was actually supposed to come out this year was
Hold on,
Paper
let
Mario.
me explain something though, or at least explain what I think. Okay, I think if Animal Crossing did come out around Pokemon, like, to you guys, I kind of agree with you guys. They would have like sort of bastardized each other's sales a little bit, for sure. I agree with that, but I think there still would have been games. I think the reason we aren't seeing games isn't because there aren't games developed and ready to go. It's purely because of more of the marketing situation here. How Nintendo chooses to market themselves and set things up. I think there's games that are just waiting and ready. Like Pikmin 3 Deluxe has probably been done for a very long time. We got, like for example, from what Emily Rogers understood, the game could have come out this April or May, but they decided to release it all the way at the end of October. Assuming that's true, it kind of it supports my theory here. Supposedly Metroid Prime Trilogy HD has been done for a very long time. These Mario remasters probably didn't take that long to remaster. 3D World Deluxe is also supposedly like ready as well. All these different things they could have just put out at any point this year, and they have chosen not to. And I think they have reason they have chosen not to because they didn't need to.
Remasters in general don't even take a year. Like I remember they said the Wind Waker took them a total of 6 months to make.
Yeah,
And they were doing experiments with that because they had to make a new engine for the remake, which they later ended up using for different remasters. So they probably could have done, if they had all the work done already, they could probably get like a remaster done now in just a few months, like 4 months.
Yeah. But like again, like on Animal Crossing, it's just again, it was kind of lucky that they delayed it because you got something new and shiny. That was a game that people were saying it melts stress away at a very stressful, weird time.
Right, it was perfect timing. I agree with that.
That timing was perfect, and that's part of why it blew up so big. As far as other games, it's like, yeah, I would imagine there would have to be probably one game, probably Pikmin, that would have been in that time slot anyways, and that got pushed back further towards holiday. But then we gotta wonder, like, did they really have that many games around here? And what were they expecting? Like again, I'm pretty sure they were expecting more third party, but third party got messed up, as everyone did. And that's honestly, I've been thinking that since after the first partner showcase, is that I'm pretty sure they were banking on third party this year.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any way that this year was supposed to be good because I don't care how hard you were hit by the pandemic. There's no way that it affected you this much when nobody else has been affected this much, unless you were just incompetent, to be honest.
We've talked about it in the past where a lot of Japanese businesses apparently are still working on.
But that doesn't matter. You're a business that makes billions of dollars.
Nintendo
you could
has
instantly just be like, okay, we bought everything everybody in the company needs. It's shipping to you right now. And they wouldn't even blink.
So
like, I
I
understand that they're kind of like a non tech country, but it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. You could do this if you wanted to. Like, there's no excuse here, in my opinion, for it being really delays past like a few months, because
supply chain issues even with PC parts. So if you want to buy them all computers and be like, oh, there you go, there's not that many there. Like you'd be fighting other companies to do it. There was a ton of problems with it, whereas a lot of the stuff happening on Sony was happening in the US. A lot of stuff, like Microsoft is an American company, like they're set up to work.
Microsoft is set up so well.
Like, and again, like Microsoft, it's like, oh well, everyone needs it. Well, we should probably go buy a bunch of computers. Like, why? We'll just open up the storehouse and send them. Like, Microsoft is probably the company that should have been hit the least by the pandemic out of the three of them.
Yeah. I mean, Sony's been out here just keep it on.
Yeah.
Well, my point is, it's not impossible for them to have gotten things ready. They have so much money, so much resources, so many connections. Like, I understand not every company can just instantly get everything ready with the supply chain, but they should have been the ones causing the supply to be low. They should have been able to buy it like first. They have so much money.
But as soon as that happens, now they're fighting Google, Apple, like everyone is fighting, and it's like you can throw them around as much money as you want. And yes, Nintendo has money to throw around, but Nintendo also is very careful with their money.
Right.
And they're not going to.
That's the
we know that stock wasn't that bad for more than 2 months. So it really wasn't.
This is my
2 months stock is still like pretty detrimental.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not set up very well, and you have like your main workforce is not set up for 2 months, maybe a third month to deal with the shipping and everything else. You're still running into issues. But again, like I don't think they had a ton planned this year. I think they were planning on third parties.
My point, I want to make it clear. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I guess I do want to interrupt you, but I want to make it clear. I'm not saying that there shouldn't have been delays. 100%, I understand why there would be delays. My only point is there probably wasn't that much planned, because the amount of delay does not coincide with how much has been seemingly pushed or just non-existent.
It does look like Nintendo, at least from the surface, to your point, Brandon, it has been more impacted than the other companies. And you think, considering how great of a company Nintendo is, and yes, they have a lot of studios in Japan, but they also have studios outside of Japan, just like Sony. You would have thought they would have been able to do a little bit more, but I agree with you. I think part of it is because of the pandemic. If it wasn't for the pandemic, we'd be like, all right, this year might not be the best year, but it's still a solid year, right? We probably would have been thinking that if there wasn't a pandemic this year. But I think because this is intentionally meant to be a down year, right? We've talked about it before. I think the Switch revision is coming out in 2021. If we look at the pattern, 2016 was trash. 2017 was the best year ever for Nintendo with the Switch, right? 2018 was kind of slow until Smash and Let's Go came out. 2019 was a little slow in the beginning, but like the final 2/3 of the year were just jam-packed with games, and that also had 2 Switch revisions come out during that time as well. There seems to be a pattern here. 2020 looks like it would have been slower than other years. Even if the pandemic didn't delay things, it probably would have not been as good as 2017 at least, right? 2021 is looking primed to be a really strong year. So I do think that part of it is simply that this is going to be a little bit of a slow year for Nintendo. We are hoping it'd be a strong peak year, but you never really know until things happen. So I mean that could definitely be the case.
People were also hoping that Breath of the Wild 2 was going to drop this year, which automatically makes it a massive year.
Yeah.
And if it ends up coming out this March, it's not that far off. So,
but again, you always want that big holiday title, and the Nintendo always does a big holiday push. And at this point in time, I don't know.
I guess it's gonna be the Mario remasters.
I want to read this.
It has the branding for a big push. So
this is a little bit of a off topic here, but I want to read this comment from Ronnie Fazio. So Ronnie Fazio added me. When Banjo got revealed for Smash and got that big reaction, I wonder if someone at Nintendo regretted not buying Rareware years ago. What are your thoughts on Nintendo not buying them? Well, I do wish Nintendo had the IP, but also, here's the thing. The Rare games had a certain personality to them, and without that personality, they wouldn't really be the Rare games. And part of the problem is that over the years, the different people who worked at Rare left Rare. So all those people are in different locations right now. So to still have that same essence and spirit, it would be challenging. Now, I'll say that you don't have to have the exact same people. If you just look at what the core personality and fundamentals for that game were, you can sort of study that and replicate that, or sort of adapt, build something along those lines. That can still be done even with a different team. But
it has to be with a team that cares to make content like that. You can't just pull on a team that just
and tell them to do it.
It's like, just like, do this, emulate this, because it's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be like nuts and bolts.
But you want someone to do it when they feel compelled to do it, when that's where their artistic expression sends them. So
I feel like a lot of those workers you definitely can bring in and if they're not like crazy passionate about that franchise in itself, that's one thing. But it's the like there's certain hires, like your art director has to be like in love with it. Your game director has to be in love. Like all the people at the top have to be like in love with the franchise and ready to do it. And I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to get some people, especially like with a company like Rare, that where you know they have a nice history to them. You're going to find people that are fans and are passionate about their games, and even if they're not like, oh, this is my number one dream franchise to be working on, like there's still going to be passion there, and like people are still going to bring it out and try their best. Like I feel like they can still produce games that are fairly close to the same atmosphere as before, but obviously they're going to be different because it's a different person. They're going to want to put their mark on the game, and that's, you know, it's just different ideas. And
I just wonder if Microsoft looks at Rare and just knows that. I mean, the people who are into Rare stuff are people who played back in the 90s and early 2000s and played those Rare games, and they want, most of them, obviously not all, but most of them want exactly the same thing, just modern, which honestly is not
what
really
Nintendo really does,
happen.
unless it's a remaster. They don't really do that. I'll also say that with the current large cast of franchises Nintendo already has, many of them, most of them are underutilized. Where's F-Zero? Where's Kid Icarus? Where's Star Tropics? You know, the list goes on. Earthbound, Wave Race, Cubivore, Golden Sun. Thank you.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of franchises that aren't really used. So you know, if Nintendo had even more, then what would that mean? More underutilized franchises. Like, unless it's like guaranteed to sell a few million, Nintendo rarely takes it. Like, they do take chances, and I do think some of these franchises we will see again. I do think F-Zero and Wave Race will happen again. It's just gonna take a really long time. So my point is that if they had, even if they owned the rights to it, they would have to hire more studios, and I just don't see it. I don't see how it would have really made sense for that. Maybe a couple select few franchises, like maybe buy Banjo. What else would make sense? What would make sense for them? I mean, I would love it if they had Killer Instinct.
I think the problem is Microsoft's not going to sell it to them.
No.
They're just going to sell this IP and be like, hey, you go make some money off of this thing I own instead of me just holding it.
The problem is that Microsoft needs it compared to Nintendo. I mean, if you look at the time frame, Nintendo already hits that nostalgia bit. Microsoft needs studios like that. They need those IPs.
I just don't think they use them well enough.
Missing right now.
I think they're afraid.
They have pieces. They're missing using them because that's the problem. Right now they have Halo, Gears, Forza. You know, like
imagine if they turned Banjo-Kazooie into like their Mario. You know, like Sony has that, right? They have Little Big Planet. They have Ratchet and Clank. What does Microsoft have?
Last of Us,
Banjo,
Spider-Man.
Right, they have
God
Banjo. But in terms of platformers, right? Like
the problem is that Mario is one of the few platformers that's actually still to this day selling well every time it hit.
Yeah.
You got that new Crash game though.
Like Little Big Planet, isn't it on a break now? Did it not sell well? I'm pretty sure it didn't sell well.
They're making a new one.
Good. They should.
It's a different concept. It's like a more 3D version of the game, but it's just the same series.
On a platformer, Microsoft does have Ori.
Yeah,
they bought out
Ori and Cuphead, even though they're not exclusive anymore, though.
Yeah. But they still have them.
But I want to happen with the next Ori, because Ori they bought that during a time where they were already developing for other platforms, and when they purchased all those studios, they said they were going to allow them to finish up the projects they had for other platforms and honor all of those contracts.
Yeah,
and then
they bought a lot of really good studios. So
they did. It's great acquisitions. I'm really excited to see what they do this gen.
Yeah.
The reason I think they haven't made another Banjo is because I think they're afraid that they're gonna make another Nuts and Bolts. Honestly, I think there's two problems. One, there's the people who want everything to be exactly the same, which would never work, because if you put Banjo, like, you can't just make the exact same game. That's what happened with Ukulele. They made the exact same game, emulated Banjo exactly, played just like a classic Rare game, which was on the N64, which played terrible by today's standards, let's be honest. You can't just do the same thing again. They've tried that, it doesn't work. On the other hand, you can't change it, because then fans will get upset at you. Even if you change it in a way that's good, you're going to get a lot of backlash. And a lot of times you change it in a way that does not go over well at all for anybody, which is nuts and bolts. So I think that they're looking at those three big issues and just being like, maybe we don't need to make a new Banjo.
Consider this. So I like what you're saying, but consider Halo. So eventually Microsoft had to move away from Bungie, and they had to have their own in-house studio making Halo. Was it 343 Industries? Yeah. And since they switched over to that new studio, Halo has not felt the same. Halo is their baby. Halo is their big mascot, and they still, after all these years, haven't really been able to match its previous glory. It's kind of been on a downward trend, and they're trying to turn it all around with Halo Infinite. And they might do it, but that's like their big thing. That's like the one franchise that they're going to put all their money into to make work. You know what I mean?
This is what made them successful in the first place.
Right.
The Xbox wouldn't have been anything without Halo.
My point is, though...
Another as well is for Gears, when they had to move over to the Coalition. Gears 4...
But Gears got better.
I wouldn't say Gears 4 was better. It had some bad game design in it, especially the ending mission was just a terrible mess. I hated that thing. The game was great up until the end mission, and the whole time in that end mission I'm like, this is terrible, and then it's like, oh, the game's done? What?
I played, well, to be honest, I'm gonna give you my experience for context. I played 5, and then I tried playing 1, and I was like, this is not even close to as good as 5. I don't even care to play it. I'll just wait for 6.
Okay. But just to go back to, just to close out my point, you see what with the whole Gear situation, with the Halo situation, what Microsoft has sort of struggled with in order to get those games to be better with different talent. Banjo-Kazooie hasn't had a real game in years, so, and that has no proven track sales history there to work with Microsoft. So, you know, there's less reason to put as much investment in there, and when Microsoft's put in a lot of investment, they're still not necessarily successful. So there's a lot of challenges with Microsoft putting together the appropriate team to make a really good Banjo-Kazooie. I'm not saying they can't ever do it. I'm hoping they do someday. I hope maybe they do some sort of collaboration with Nintendo. I hope. But that's a hope, a wish, not an expectation. But yeah, so Banjo-Kazooie, like, I'd love to see something like with that someday, but I'll believe it when I see it.
When Fable comes out, we'll see what the reboot of Fable looks like. And if the Fable reboot turns out well and it goes over well and people love it, then you can start looking towards Banjo remake, refresh, whatever. Like they'll reboot that and they'll get it going. But if it doesn't go over well, if there's any issues with it, don't expect it, because they're not having, so far they haven't had much luck with it, with redoing these series. And Fable's going to be a big one they're banking on. They're going to be spending a lot of money on it, a lot more than they probably be spending on a Banjo game. And if it doesn't go over well, don't expect them to take a risk on a Banjo game as well.
They've had other failed projects, like they had Scalebound. That was going to be so cool. Like, at least the idea of that was cool. And it, you know,
I think that problem had a lot more. That game, I'm not completely up to date on everything about that game, but it had a lot of other problems.
Well, the dragon
in general, trying to get it to run, from what I've heard, trying to get it to run on the original Xbox One was also like a big thing. Like they couldn't get it in a good state.
It wasn't the game the developer wanted to make.
Yeah, that too. There was a lot of issues with that game. It was a complicated beast.
It was a complicated beast. But I think we should sort of move on here. Before we jump into Switch Revision discussion, I want to just kind of get your thoughts on this situation, because we had the partner showcase. Not everyone was excited about it. It wasn't the direct we all wanted. Do you guys think there will be a direct we all want? Is Jeff Grubb's been saying that an equivalent to a direct will be coming by mid-September? Do you agree with that, or do you think no?
I'm gonna go approach it from the original wording, which is it going to be a direct that we're hoping for? Which is no, it's not. 100%, that's not happening. That direct doesn't exist. At least in my opinion, I don't think it's no. There's never gonna be a direct that comes in and saves 2020. In my opinion, I don't think it's possible. I don't think there's gonna be this. I think. And it depends on who you are, like personally. So I'm kind of basing it off of the more optimistic fanboy approach to thinking. That direct that they think is gonna happen doesn't exist. Let's be honest, it's not gonna happen. Doesn't exist. A different direct, which is way smaller than what people think should happen. Is what we might get, hopefully. But that's kind of even that. I'm kind of like,
what would be the smaller direct? Are you think another mini, or would you think it would be called a direct? Would it even have a direct naming?
That's so you're asking a lot of tough questions.
But my question to you is just that you're saying to not expect like a real Nintendo Direct, like one from like do you think it's possible you get a direct that's comparable to last year's September Direct, or do you think no matter what it has to be even less than that?
I think it'll be less than that, to be honest, unless they want to talk about their 2021 lineup. Honestly, I think they might just stick to their 2020 lineup, show us the few games that are coming up for the rest of the year, and then have something else like later that shows off 2021, like in January. They might show off a few things for early 2021. Say if Breath of the Wild 2 is gonna come out like in March, they'll probably show that. But then again, it's Nintendo, and this year they've been just not showing things that we think they should show. So my expectations are limited. The possibilities are a little bit higher than what I'm saying, but honestly, I don't think it's even really a good chance. Or obviously, there's always a possibility, but it's so low that we're gonna get a direct that's even comparable to just a normal Nintendo Direct. And that's just my opinion, though. I think it's gonna be at the best a little bit worse than a normal Nintendo Direct. It's not gonna be the E3 of Nintendo Directs. It's not gonna be the second coming of the Directs that's saves 2020 and shows us the way forward. I don't think that's happening.
I don't think we get another Nintendo Direct this year. I think they bank on trailers, and I think we get the partner showcases. And I believe that there's probably going to be one big third-party game for the holiday. That's what I'm gonna.
Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I definitely think that's a good possibility. I'm just kind of 50-50 on it.
I wouldn't. It's not what I'd prefer. It's just what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to get trailers for the rest of the year. I think if Breath of the Wild 2 is early next year, I think they're going to do a trailer of it.
That's enough.
I think they're just going to drop trailers, shadow drop trailers, maybe even hint at when they're going to do it. And I think it's the partner showcases. I think right off the bat of that first partner showcase, they said expect more this year.
The first one was in the end of July, and then we got another one at the end of August. So they might be a monthly thing.
I unless they're going to be showing off stuff for,
like maybe we get like something from Nintendo like in September, and maybe that off puts the need for a partner showcase in September. But
possibly,
yeah.
But at the same time, they said expect more this year. They were saying to expect more partner showcases this year. They never mentioned it going any further than that. Yeah. And I don't see them really doing anything in November for a partner showcase. Like unless you're showing off a January game, it doesn't make sense to be like, okay, well, this game's coming out in a few hours. It's like, well, you should have outlined that earlier. That would have changed things.
I mean, they've already been showing stuff for 2021 in those partner showcases, so I think we'll get another one next month, maybe another one in October, and that's it for the year. I don't think we'll get one in November or December.
That makes sense.
I think we get. I think the Mario collection. I think Skyward Sword. possibly Metroid, if Metroid Trilogy, if they're in a panic. I still
You mean all
stay
for
by-
you mean all for this year? I don't know.
If they need it, yeah. If they don't have anything else, I could see it. Again, I've been very adamant that Metroid is going to be an early year thing on the year that Prime 4 releases, and the only way that changes is if they get there and it's like, well, what do we say to our investors? Okay, drop Trilogy.
I disagree on the point that Prime Trilogy were released in the same year as Prime 4. I think that's just weird that they were released so much.
I think they could be about a year apart.
Mainline content, yeah.
I think
But
my perspective right now, personally, is that because Prime Trilogy hasn't been announced yet, unless it's coming out like in December, I don't think it's coming out this year. And because it's not coming out this year, I don't think Prime 4 is coming out in 2021. I think Prime 4 is probably a 2022 thing at this stage. Now, hey, if for whatever reason, Dumo, you're right, and they announce like Prime Trilogy for like this January, February, then I'll be like, maybe he's on to something, and maybe like December, November it comes out. But my expectation at this point is that Prime Trilogy somehow comes out next year, and then Prime 4 comes out in 2022. But we'll see on that. My perspective is that I think I believe Jeff Grubb, what he's saying. I think something by mid-September is going to happen. Is it going to be the full-scale Nintendo Direct? Well, as much as I want that to be the case, I think I've been punished repeatedly for having optimistic perspectives throughout the year. So I say we get the Mario remasters. If they somehow squeeze in Skyward Sword HD as well, that's possible. But at this stage, unless something's announced like tomorrow, we're not getting anything in September. I don't think Nintendo's going to put in another product with Pikmin 3 Deluxe and the Cadence of Hyrule release, considering how slow the year has been for October. So that means pretty much just November and December are going to have games to be announced from Nintendo for this year at this point. That's what it seems like. Yeah. So, what, you said no or yeah?
No, I said yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So maybe Mario Remasters come out in November at this stage, and maybe squeeze in something for December. But let's not forget, there's still Bravely Default 2. That's a published Nintendo game. It's been slated for 2020. Maybe it's being pushed or delayed, or maybe it's just coming out this December. And maybe the lineup for Nintendo's 2020 to close out the year is Pikmin 3 Deluxe this October, Mario Remasters in November, and Bravely Default 2 in December. I think that's okay. My hope is that a Nintendo Direct happens in September. They announce that, what I just said, but they also talk about what's coming for the first part of 2021. They announce a Smash character. If I'm right about Breath of the Wild 2, it comes out this March, and then maybe 3D World Deluxe comes out this January. Maybe that's it. Hey, if maybe you, I would love to see like Prime Trilogy for February or something like that. But if it happens, it happens. I'm not gonna like bank on it. And I guess the one thing that sort of throws a wrench in my plans here is that Skyward Sword HD does seem like it's somewhat likely. So maybe instead of getting Breath of the Wild 2 this March, we get Skyward Sword HD instead. That's a possibility. Tricky. Unless, Dumo, you're right, and we get Skyward Sword this year on top of the Mario remasters. That could be cool, because if we get Skyward Sword before the year ends, I think there's still room for like a spring release for Breath of the Wild 2.
I don't think Skyward Sword is going to be I don't think they'd be banking on it to be like a crazy seller. It'd just be a really good game to help the lineup. I would expect it in December. I would love to see Breath of the Wild 2 in a March release. I don't think they will. I think they'll save that. I think the year that it releases, their whole expectation was we're going to make this big blowout show at E3 and show it off, and we'll release it holiday. That would be my expectation with it.
I guess the strange thing about that is that the game seems so far along last year at E3 2019. To wait 2.5 more years after that initial like reveal trailer would be weird, especially because development started back in 2017. So a holiday 2021 release is not. I don't think it's impossible, especially considering how the pandemic has kind of moved everything up a little bit. I am just. We'll see. I mean, you might not be wrong. It's just kind of strange.
Like that's something you really want to push at an E3. Like that's something you can build.
But the other
they
problem
can
is that
build
E3 is
their
in question
entire
now. We don't
around
even
it.
know if there will be like an E3 next year. We
I don't
what's
even
gonna
know
happen.
that they E3 isn't really the same as it was, and we skipped a year. Like, I don't think they need to show off Breath of the Wild at E3. I think they have their own events that do so well for them. Like, they could just have a Breath of the Wild sequel direct and then just show it all off there. I don't think they need to wait to. For my thing is just why, if we were gonna get it out in like November 2020, and okay, yeah, delay it because the pandemic to March. Why would you then decide, like, okay, you know, it's going to come out in November. We're just actually going to wait all the way till next November to sit on this game. And, I mean, you could, but they don't need to. They've already shown that they can sell it any time of the year and have ridiculous sales. I mean, March has been some of the best sales for Nintendo. Like, that's been one of their biggest months.
Give me a
every
moment.
single
I have
year
to
of the
take care of
Switch.
my cat. I'll be right back.
It's because they're the only ones
Okay.
dropping games in March.
There's less competition, and like fans buy during March period. We saw the original Breath of the Wild release in March. Animal Crossing, obviously, that released in March did so well for them. I don't think they need to use the holiday launch anymore. Like, they get sales anyways.
It's true. I just they like they like going into the holiday with a very specific hard hitter.
Right.
And that's one of them. And they definitely don't need E3. They just don't.
My
But
thing is, like,
I
if you
like
had... I understand, but if you had 2020, like, Zelda was supposed to be your big hitter, then you have another big hitter already planned to come out 2021. So it'd be weird for you to then delay Breath of the Wild 2 longer than it needs to then be next to another big hitter you already had planned for that year. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
No, I agree. I guess kind of where I differ is that I never expected it to be 2020.
I'm back. I'm just trying to fix my camera now.
Sounds good.
But,
Yeah,
That's an entirely different argument that I have talked so much about.
Yeah, like we've discussed this numerous times, and it just sort of like I see your point, and if it was supposed to be a 2020 release, I could see them sitting on it that long, because that just seems like a Nintendo thing to do. Is just, we have this, let's sit on it, because I'm pretty sure if you go back to the launch of the Switch, they were talking about they didn't know whether or not Zelda was going to make the launch, and basically what they were talking about was, if Zelda didn't make the launch, it was going to be Mario Odyssey, and Zelda was going to be the holiday title. Mm-hmm. Zelda made the launch, Mario Odyssey became the holiday title. Now, would they hold for an entire year?
Yeah. And Mario Odyssey, they did polish that game considerably in the following months. So, like, that game would have been rushed for launch. I don't think that game was just ready and they were just like, whatever. Like,
I think it was ready enough to launch.
Yeah.
The extra polish definitely did it well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Breath of the Wild was rushed to launch. You can tell by the Switch performance and all the patches they did to fix that. So, yeah, I think that's a different situation, to be honest. But I mean, I wouldn't be disappointed, I guess, if they decided, like, hey, you know what? We could put even more polish into this game and get it out holiday 2021. We can add even more stuff. Like, I wouldn't be upset about that. I would be kind of weird for them to hold it like their biggest game and just be like, we could release it now and, you know, satiate fans that have been waiting the entirety of 2020 hoping for this game, like hoping for anything.
If it was announced and they said it was coming this year, and they held it for an entire year, I wouldn't be okay with that. Let's
no.
What are we talking about?
That's a different situation.
We're still talking about Breath of the Wild.
Oh.
2.
Okay.
But if the game, like, if it was supposed to be 2020 and they decide to hold it right now for an entire year, I would not know, and I would just assume that they were still working on it, and maybe we internally delayed it a little bit. Like, okay, cool, so you're gonna have more polish. I'd be fine with that. You know, you tell me it's coming out this holiday, and then you're like, oh, we have to push it back. We're gonna push it back a year for polish.
Yeah, I mean, that's the advantage of not setting any sort of release date on it, because People just now know it's in development. Okay, but when's it coming? Well, whenever we decide for it to come out. So it's a tricky situation, and I think it's entirely possible that Breath of the Wild 2 could be nearly done, and it all comes down to what makes sense for Nintendo from a marketing perspective. Maybe the game is nearly done. I think you guys were bringing up Mario Odyssey. Mario Odyssey was supposedly nearly done when the Switch was coming out back in 2017, and they saved it for the holidays. So it is conceivable they could do something similar for Breath of the Wild 2 if they don't have something big for the 2021 holiday. But my argument for an early Breath of the Wild 2 release, besides all the evidence suggesting it's far into development, is also the 35th anniversary, but also the reports for a Switch revision coming out early 2021. I think if you have any sort of game that would be great to pair alongside a Switch revision, it would be Breath of the Wild 2, especially if this is something that has a horsepower boost that will have improved visuals. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be like a 4K Switch, but I do think it's going to look better. From the reports, it suggests it's going to be better. I think it's going to be kind of like a new 3DS situation, maybe slightly better than that. And even with the new 3DS, they advertise improved horsepower, improved loading time, improved processing. So I think
games actually ran smoothly instead of freaking like 20 frames per second.
Right. So I think, I think that it makes sense to have something like that. Now, maybe what they do instead of Breath of the Wild 2, they, for example, have Skyward Sword HD to come out with the Switch revision this spring, an early 2021 release. That's possible, but again, if this is a system that's meant to sort of like be a little bit better, to actually have better visuals, I feel like it makes more sense to have Breath of the Wild 2 be that kind of game.
I don't know how you would upgrade Skyward Sword HD on a Switch Pro other than... Because it like 100% it's going to be 1080p, like full 1080p on the 60 Switch. So
frames per second,
what are you going to do? Like
I don't know.
4K? I doubt they'll do 60 just because all the other Zelda games have stuck to 30. Yeah, I think it has something to do with the way they coded the game, the timings and stuff. I'm not exactly sure because a lot of developers have moved away from that recently, but I have no idea how that game was programmed initially.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't make sense to launch it next to a Switch Plus or new Switch or whatever.
It doesn't make sense to launch a port or an updated older game beside a newer
unless it was like a full remake that was like, like modern visuals or something that actually could get a boost.
Happen. No.
But no, that's not happening.
Would you say Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition would be the kind of game that would make sense to come out with a Switch Plus?
Nope.
If it actually ran at 1080p, that'd be nice. But that game actually had visual features that could be enhanced.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're gonna do it right, I feel like it would have to be a brand new game.
Yeah, it needs to be a brand new game.
You're looking at a Breath of the Wild 2. You can run it beside Mario Odyssey 2, Metroid Prime 4, sure.
The Pokemon
remake, you're gonna have, because it's not gonna be if you release it with a remake, it's not gonna be, oh, look what this system can do. It's gonna be, oh, look how good the remake looks.
Yeah.
You're gonna be comparing the remake to the original. You're not gonna be comparing the system.
Right. Yeah, so it makes more sense to have it where, like, for example, Breath of the Wild 2 has better frame rate on the Switch Plus. It runs instead of like 900p, it runs at 1080p. Like, that's like a kind of difference that would make hardcore fans like myself want to get it. So that's why I think it makes sense. But let's talk about I want to talk about specifically the Switch revision with the reports here. But let me address a couple of questions in the chat, and then we'll move on to that. Christopher Alexander Hernandez. Assuming no September Direct happens, which hopefully does happen, I think the latest it could be is on October due to Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Like an actual Direct?
I don't think they have to talk about Pikmin 3 Deluxe again, at all. They released their Accolades trailer, and that's about it. Maybe a launch day
they
trailer
can maybe
as well.
showcase a little bit. They could give us a trailer kind of talking about the extra Olimar missions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I this year's so hard to predict. So if there isn't something in September, could something happen in October? Yeah, but
not because of Pikmin, I don't think.
But maybe that is something they could have in it to kind of feature a little bit more. But they could also just do that within a trailer.
If anything, I'd say a treehouse.
Well, that maybe. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
They had that treehouse for Paper Mario, so
So there's probably more coming. I don't think it's going to be the only treehouse this year. Benjamin W. Skyward Sword for December to get people excited for more Zelda, then release Breath of the Wild 2 in early 2021 to boost sales. I am hoping for something like that, but we'll see. And I do agree that if the Skyward Sword HD is actually in the works, then it makes sense for that to come up before Breath of the Wild 2. Is it possible they could do it the other way around? I think anything is possible, but I agree that if I had to pick, I would say Skyward Sword should come up before Breath of the Wild 2 as opposed to the other way around.
probably.
Let me see here. Paint Fat Purple. Mario Kart 9 could launch with the new hardware, and Breath of the Wild 2 could come out on the holiday, or vice versa. Yeah, like if that's another interesting point. That let's say I'm right, or we're right, or what have you, or just lucky, and Breath of the Wild 2 comes in the first half of 2021 along with the Switch Plus. Maybe that also means that Nintendo has something else really big for the holidays for 2021, like a Mario Kart 9, maybe Metroid Prime 4, maybe a combination of things. I think for sure another mainline Pokemon game is coming out next year for the holidays because the DLC is this year. So if they only have DLC this year, that's giving them a little bit more resources to put into a game for next year. Pokemon games are pretty much annual. This is pretty much the exception with this DLC. So that's another thing that could be like help the holidays for 2021. But let's move on to this Switch revision discussion here. So there's kind of several different things. There was an FCC filing for different components. There was let me see, I have the articles here. So there was the initial report that kind of put this all into the conversation was Economic Daily News, a Taiwan news place. Yeah. Basically, they said there's going to be more interactivity. Yeah, I got it right here. So the new Switch will begin production later this year and will be released early next year. Macronix, one of the official Nintendo providers for game carts, is expecting record sales next year. Macronix will be supplying parts to Nintendo for this new model with better image quality and interactivity. So better image quality and interactivity, to me that suggests, well, image quality could either mean like higher resolution or a better screen on the actual system itself.
Right.
But then there's also Bloomberg, and they're saying, they're just backing this up really, and saying it could potentially have 4K visuals. So this part. Let me like read this. I'll show this to you guys on the stream. The release of the upgraded Switch would be coupled with or followed by a slew of games from Nintendo itself and related outside studios. The people said those games would address a wide range of players, from casual gamers seeking small doses of escapism, or yeah, that doesn't matter. And they also talk about 4K stuff here as well. The revised model is likely to feature more computing power and 4K high definition graphics. They're saying likely. I'm not sure about likely, but definitely I think there's a possibility there could be some sort of 4K aspect, but I doubt that's going to be like all native. And on top of all of that, like after the Bloomberg thing, we saw like the FCC filing for different like Switch components, which all sort of supports the idea of a Switch revision coming out in 2021. And my personal theory is that, hey, look at the trend, right? 2017 had a lot of Switch games, Switch came out. 2018 was kind of slow, no Switch revision. 2019, 2 Switch revisions, a whole bunch of games came out. 2020 slow, nothing. 2021, it's looking like it's gonna be a pretty strong year, and now we're getting reports for a Switch revision to come out in 2021. So it seems like there's a pattern here. I think it makes sense. I think Nintendo's not gonna stop making revisions. That makes sense. They did that for the 3DS, the DS lines. That they're gonna do that for the Switch as well, I think. So I think this is real. I don't know if it's going to have 4K visuals, but I definitely think some sort of enhanced Switch is coming out next year. What do you guys think?
I think NVIDIA hasn't said anything that can do 4K like that. I believe they also said that it was a 4K playback, which the Tegra X1 is capable of anyways.
Technically, yeah, it is.
It can. It plays 4K video. It has 4K playback, which is the same
The
thing.
Switch, though, does not support that. The dock itself is not compatible with high enough bandwidth HDMI that it can actually support it, which is why you see Hulu doesn't have the option for 4K and things like that.
Yeah, but again, like it is still possible on the SoC. So
yes,
4K playback isn't special.
No, it's not.
My opinion. And now, if they were to update the dock to like update it so that it would actually play it back for video. That doesn't do anything for games though. That would just be like, oh well, maybe they're bringing Netflix, and I'm not buying a new Switch for Netflix.
I'm gonna bring it up, guys. 4K dock. The 4K dock. The supplemental computing device. Those patents from before the Switch existed.
Talked legitimately, actually, like believing that would happen for a long time. It's been a long time.
Well, so I don't see it. I think it was just one of those filings that they made just to have. There's also been articles saying that this filing is for an updated dev kit and not.
I was reading through the thing you sent.
Yeah, so it's.
I will say. Finish what you're saying.
No, it's tough to say whether or not they're actually going to do it. One thing I would say is that the enhanced versions of systems, where it's supposed to be a big jump in power, don't sell that well in comparison.
No, I mean, they're not really.
It's the cheaper ones. Now, if it's going to be like, again, like if it's going to be a revision like the base Xbox One to the Xbox One S, where they add a bit of a feature, and
I feel like that was kind of the battery life switch was kind of the S of the Switch. We already got that.
Which is what I feel. So I don't know if it makes sense. And then you already have 4K is not happening. Let's put it that way. For starters, I don't think there's an SoC that can do it right now. NVIDIA would be screaming that to the heavens right now.
I will say real quick, they've been extremely quiet on all of their mobile processors since the Switch has launched. They haven't talked about any new chips past, I think there's one past the Xavier, but they haven't talked about any gaming chips after the X1 actually. Even the X2 wasn't exactly a gaming chip. So they haven't made a gaming SoC since the X1. So I wouldn't really say that that's a fair thing to say, because I haven't talked about any gaming mobile stuff since then.
All right, fair enough. But so there's nothing there, and then on top of that, I don't think it makes sense for them. They've already said that there's been problems with developers and having the two different modes, where you have the docked and undocked. If you have the docked undocked 4K and the 4K undocked, it makes it very difficult on developers who have already complained about it. Now, there is also the argument that they're going to have to get used to it, especially if you're...
that's kind of the future right now. I mean, we're going to have the PS5, PS4 Pro, PS4, Xbox One X, Xbox One S, and the Xbox Series X. That's going to be, essentially, if you're a third-party developer, that's going to be already 8 different versions of the game you have to make just for console.
Yeah, so you're going to have your Series X, your Series S, but at the same time, I would imagine a lot of the companies are going to be releasing on PC as well. So that's a lot of it's going to be your X to your S is going to be a slider with your settings followed up by
dynamic resolution.
Yeah.
The good thing about these kind of things is we have a lot of technologies today that are easy to get performance without that much work. There's things like DLSS is a new thing coming up from NVIDIA. Dynamic resolution scaling and upscaling has been a huge thing this generation that was not really a thing at all previously. That just the idea of dynamic resolution and upscaling was not a thing last generation, just wasn't. And all of those things form together to allow you to make ports to different spec systems way quicker. Because instead of having to make brand new assets and things like that, you do have to do that, obviously, for some parts. But a lot of times you can just be like, okay, the game's not running super well at this resolution. Just throw on dynamic resolution. That saves up your GPU bottleneck. Now, if you have bottlenecks elsewhere, you have to fix that, obviously. But it does help a lot of new technologies we have that are really just as easy as turning them on. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah,
and especially with every hardware being unified, as far as most things being very similar architecturally. It's not like back in the day when you had 17 different processors that all worked completely differently.
Yeah, I don't see 4K coming. I could see something running your game, your dynamic resolution games could actually hold 1080p,
Yeah.
that I probably wouldn't end up buying that.
So let me ask you guys a question. I don't disagree with you guys, but Bloomberg is saying likely 4K. What's up with
Bloomberg
that?
is
What is
talking
up?
out of their ass.
Bloomberg has said a lot.
I
of things.
believe.
Yeah,
I don't think
they
Nintendo
reported- yeah.
needs to focus on 4K for a Switch Plus. Like, it's not a feature that they really need. They could put that in like by the Switch 2, you know, in like 2023, where that's actually like something they could do easily. Right now, I think there probably is an SoC that they could make that would do it. But I think it would be really expensive. I don't think that they should right now. I don't think there's
Yeah.
point. Yeah, I think it'd be.
Okay, take a mobile chip. Say there's one that can do 4K. Okay, great. Put it beside. That's going to be put beside the PS5 and the Series X. And do you think that's going to stand up, or do you think people are going to be like, "Well, that's not real 4K"?
Yeah. I mean, people already complain about the PS4 Pro and its upscaling. Honestly, people need to stop. Just quick sidebar here. Resolution is not everything, guys. Stop complaining. You don't need 4K. On my gaming monitor with my $2,000 PC setup, I run a 1440p monitor. Like, 4K, not a big deal.
Disgusting. How could you watch that? How are your eyes not constantly bleeding staring at a 1440p monitor? Yeesh. You know, I want to let you. Right now, I started rewatching Naruto. The last time I binge watched Naruto, which has been a few times in my life, I think it's like the third time I've done it from beginning to end. The last time I was doing it, well, technically the series wasn't over back in 2016, but I was doing it back in 2016, and I watched a lot of those episodes on my new 3DS XL. And every time I would watch on the little internet browser, I would click the 480p option. Little did I know at the time that that didn't matter, because the max resolution for the screen was 240p. So, and you know,
technically on YouTube, to be fair, it does matter because they compress things way more at lower resolutions, but you know, still.
Yeah, I don't think it was on. I don't remember what it was. I'm not sure if it was YouTube. I don't think it was YouTube that I was watching it on at the time. Point is,
any streaming service. I don't know why I said YouTube. I meant streaming service.
And maybe it would have been a slightly less compressed version then. Point is, though, it was never 480. What I was watching just couldn't possibly be 480p. It just wasn't.
No.
But you know, I think 240p is terrible. But the point, I just kind of agree with you, Brandon, that even resolution isn't the sole deciding factor for what makes something look good.
No. Yeah. I will say
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I will say it's honestly it's not that important. But in your example, it is sort of biased because the original content is of a much higher resolution and then is super sampled down, which actually looks a lot better than just something running natively at 240p, like a lot better. But that's neither here nor there. I just had to see that.
It looked fine at the time. I'll tell you that. It was serviceable.
My brain was just screaming at me, you have to give him this information.
I could read the subtitles.
And that is one thing where it makes a big difference to me. When we got the Switch, and then going back to the 3DS, one thing that was very painful for me was looking at text. That was the only time I cared about the resolution.
I remember on the Wii U gamepad, I didn't know when it first came out that it was 480p. So I looked at the text in Wind Waker HD and I was like, why does this look so bad? It's so low resolution. I don't understand.
So I'm going to try something because my cat keeps bothering me. I'm going to creak this door a little bit. I hope it doesn't impact the audio that much. Because his food's outside. That's why he keeps bothering me. So let me know if things sound worse when I creak the door open.
Pet issues. This is why I don't have any. Actually, I rent out a room with, I have some roommates, but I just rent out a room in a house with me and my brother. And they have pets, and it's the most annoying thing. It's like, these aren't even mine. I have to deal with this. They're not even my pets.
Oh, it's perfect. You can enjoy them, but you don't have to work for it.
That's true. Until they get into my stuff. But for the most part, it's actually fine.
He's like, he doesn't even want to go out. He's just kind of like...
He's a cat. He tells you he wants something, and he goes, no, I actually don't want that. Fuck you.
Pretty much, yeah.
Anyway, let me. I need to. He annoys me. I love the little guy, but it's just he just keeps bothering me when I'm trying to do the podcast. And like I don't want the door open, so I gave him access to the closet. He's like he always wants to go in the closet. I don't like him in there, so I gave him access to the closet. I quieted him down for 5 minutes. Like, hey, I want to eat now. I let you eat before, and whatever, it's fine.
Okay, so my roommate had a cat back in the day, and it would come into my room, and it would hop up. My tower was just a little bit off the floor. It would hop up on my tower, and it would want me to pet it, so it would start purring, and I wouldn't because I was playing a game, and so it would start rubbing its head on the top of the desk and purring louder, and it would just get louder and louder and louder. It once sat there petting itself for 2 hours.
Great.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that great?
Just figured I'd share that one.
I'm gonna try closing the door now and see what happens. So, back on topic. Now that Onyx is done stealing the show, so I agree 4K seems unlikely. Maybe I don't know if maybe somehow there's like some sort of 4K upscaling. I don't know if that's possible. Is that possible?
It is. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
Relatively cheap. I just don't know if Nintendo wants to do that or feels the need to do that.
Yeah.
It's a technology that exists. I mean, NVIDIA has its own DLSS 2.0.
Right.
My only thing is, I think putting that hardware in at this point would be a little bit expensive. I think it's doable. You could probably get like a Switch with 4K upscaling for like $400 something, 400 hopefully. But I think they're just gonna wait for like 2-3 years when they can get out a $300 system with that technology. So I don't think they feel the need to really do that. I think there's technology available right now that's cheap, that's been out for years, that would be a big improvement to the Switch without having to go 4K. Like a lot of games in Switch don't even hit 1080p, so why are we pushing for 4K exactly?
I agree with that's not even really a need for that, for sure. But what were you say, Dumo? What were you gonna say, Dumo?
We're still waiting on the Series S to be announced and its price, and they're talking 400-ish. And do you really want to get your kind of can almost do 4K Switch for 400 to replace your current Switch, or do you want to buy into next gen cheap?
Yeah.
I don't think it makes sense at all.
No. I think they'll get out a revision. It will take those games like Doom that run at like 560p, even docked on the Switch, get them up to, I don't think even Doom will be able to run like 1080p 60 on the Switch Plus, but, get it up to where it's maybe, like a dynamic 900p instead that actually is a stable 30 FPS. I think those are going to be the types of things we see. We're going to see like Breath of the Wild 1, 1080p, smooth 30 FPS. Breath of the Wild 2, 1080p, smooth 30. And that's going to be most of the things that we see. Honestly, I think maybe we could get like third parties up to 1080p 30. I don't think we're going to see like Doom running at 60 FPS because I think there's other issues. But I mean, the technology exists. If you consider that the Tegra X1 is literally from 2015, like that was kind of getting old when the Switch launched. There's definitely way better tech available now for cheap that they could make. That's a good, 1080p machine. Make a really good 1080p machine. Because right now the Switch, unless you're playing first party, is not a 1080p machine at all.
Even with first party games, they're not really.
Yeah, even with first party, it's not really.
Unless it's like a really simple game. Like, first of all, Sword and Shield is a simple game, and it's not 1080p. What should I call it? I think like one of the few, was Link's Awakening 1080p?
Had to have been.
I think it had frame rate issues.
It did with water effects.
Yeah, but that's again.
I think the big issue with Link's Awakening was loading between areas would stutter.
I remember that.
Now, one thing on Sword and Shield though is I think their cut in resolution has more to do with how much they were, I think how many Pokemon they were trying to put on screen at a time.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me. 720p is fine. But
I think a lot of those issues were fixed in the DLC, where they dropped the number of Pokemon on screen, and instead of opening up to as vast an area as possible for the entire time in the wild area, they started cornering it off so they didn't have to.
I think Pokemon, honestly, is probably CPU limited and RAM limited.
I think the next generation...
What I'm trying to get at is I'm pretty sure it was more CPU issue than anything else.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Which
sure
is
the next
typically the
one's gonna look a lot
bottleneck
better,
for the Switch.
If you look at every set of Pokemon generations, you usually get 2 Pokemon generations per system. That first generation looks a lot worse than that second generation. When we get not next year would be only 2 years after Sword and Shield, but that third year, they're usually 3-year generations. So 2022, maybe the holiday lineup for 2022 is Metroid Prime 4 and Pokemon Generation, I guess 9. Yeah, 9. That Generation 9 will probably look a lot better and may actually look like a legitimate, I don't want to say next gen, but it'll look better than Sword and Shield, a lot better. But
they've already made it look better with the DLC, so it's
and it just shows that they're headed in that direction.
2023, 2024. Yeah, take some more time, guys. That's what's needed.
Please. They won't. 100%. 2022 is going to be the start of the next gen.
I'm hoping that the backlash was enough for the Pokemon company to go, ooh, we don't want the bad press. Maybe we should start listening to them.
They saw those sales though, and they're like,
Well, I feel like that DLC that's coming out this year instead of a release, that is kind of them giving themselves a little bit more time to work on the next game. But
depending, I think a lot of what the Crown Tundra is going to do, I think looking back at the DLCs and thinking of what they can do for a next gen, I think a lot of this generation of Pokemon is experimental. They're trying different things and seeing what goes well and what doesn't. I don't think we're going to see a wild area come back the same way. I think I think they're going to do open areas again, but I think they're going to be looking more like what the DLCs do, because it's a lot
easier.
The
entire game is just that's the world.
That's right? And yeah, I think that's what they're going to. Because again, we've talked about it in the past, where one of the big things they were wondering is if having control of the camera was going to be an issue with their audience base, because they had no idea.
They made it simple. It's just rotate. You barely have any y-axis movement, which bothers me, but hey, it's better than nothing.
That's kind of the big issue for most people.
I can't turn my camera in a city and look at it.
Yeah, that's very off-putting too. If the entire game was one way, people would complain less. But don't get me wrong. I'm glad that for the improvements we got. But yeah, that transition was a little weird. I do like what we saw with the Isle of Armor, because you do see them improving upon things. The game does look overall a little bit better than Sword and Shield, but I still feel like I would say it's a long way to go. There's still a lot more room for improvement. I'm not saying it's bad. There's just a lot more room for improvement.
There's a lot more. You also have to remember they're creating a world with entirely new assets that they've never used before. They couldn't really bring forward the chairs and tables and wallpaper from
those textures would have looked horrible.
They can start doing that now, and work on that one tree that is not even that one tree everyone hates. Although that I don't even care about that. The berry trees that annoy me more than anything. I hate them, and they stand out.
But there was a question that Colton Rowe brought up that I thought was a good one. So if resolution isn't changed, what upgrades will the Switch Pro bring? I think that's a great question, because who was it? Dumo, I think you were talking about how, if we were to get a 4K Switch, whatever that is going to offer isn't going to be the same kind of visual fidelity we're going to see on the next generation system. So if that's the Switch Pros or Switch Plus's selling point, it's probably not going to do really well. So while I personally think there will be visual improvements, and that will be a big part of the selling point, it's not going to be the sole part of the selling point. I think there's going to be more to it than just that. And from one of the reports, there is going to be more interactivity with this Switch. So what do you guys sort of envision from what we've heard so far for this Switch revision? What do you think it's going to have that's going to make it different than the previous Switches besides just better processing power?
Reduce the gyro input lag.
Okay, that's definitely a good one. Less
that's
input
one
lag.
right
Yeah,
a massive part of the Splatoon community will jump on that in a heartbeat, just for that alone.
Yeah.
They've had people like, we've had big members like of the community say if they release a new Switch that reduces the input lag back down to the amount that they had with the Wii U, they would jump on it in a heartbeat. They wouldn't even question it. They'll pay like pretty much whatever they want. Like it's,
Part of that is the server latency itself was reduced as well, or increased, I guess.
There's a measured input lag from the gyro to the system that doesn't exist on the PC. There's something with their interface.
Now,
so it has been.
It's probably their crappy Bluetooth.
Do you guys think they would market that though?
Huh?
Do you think they would market that? I feel like it might be like a quiet change.
That's got to be a quiet change, but that's one that honestly, like it.
Yeah, she's really frustrating.
Like, hardcore gamers want that.
Yeah, I will say something about Nintendo that frustrates me to no end is they never speak on like technical things like the other companies do. The other companies tell you every little thing that is improved, and you get to see what you're getting. You get to see the bang for your buck. Nintendo's like, maybe one day we'll release the specs of our system if you're lucky. The only reason they didn't with the Switch is because that was a chip that was NVIDIA based that already existed.
Did they ever actually release real specs, or is it just that we found out on launch?
I think we found out.
No,
not on launch day. We knew beforehand.
Nintendo
but
doesn't do that. I
don't think it was from Nintendo themselves.
If we find out, it's through external means usually. Like,
yeah.
If they give us specs, it's gonna be like, oh, screen size, battery length,
so
stuff like
frustrating.
that. They might.
I
bet. They might say
RAM screen size, it's 720p, 1080p docked, battery life, Joy-Con battery life, which to be perfectly honest,
that's exactly what they have on their website.
Are more than the specs itself. Because at the end of the day, if they would have put higher specs in, would it have changed how much I wanted the system? No. I still I wanted Breath of the Wild, and I wanted a portable system that played like actual console games. This was, for me, this is what brought me back into gaming, because I was slipping out. So it's like the specs at the end of the day didn't really matter to me. The fact that I have a controller that can have a battery life of over 20 hours means far more to me than, we're thinking about adding like 2 more gig of RAM. It's like, okay, that's great, but which, to be honest, if they added 2 more gig of RAM, they actually
for the Switch, that'd be such a huge increase.
If they gave us 2 more gig of RAM for not Switch, not for the Switch itself, not for playing games,
system.
for the operating system, and for their online and including chat and all these other background features that they could offer, that would matter to me. 1 gig that's not being used by games whatsoever, that's set aside from everything else.
They have that. They have 1 gig dedicated to OS already. They have more memory dedicated to the OS than the 360 had in total. Twice as much, in fact. The RAM is not the issue as far as OS stuff.
They only had a half gig of RAM.
As far as I know,
5 to the games.
Is it 3.5?
Pretty sure.
Okay, that might be the case, but at the very least, that's still. I think that's still more than the 360 had. I think the 360 had half a gig though, so it's eventually the same as the entire 360's RAM in just for the OS, and it's the most simple, basic OS you've ever seen. My point is, RAM is not the issue there. That's not the problem.
So, but give me anything that allows a. But the other problem is, okay, so you have this great OS that put in. They give us all these features on a Pro version. But then what about everyone else? Like, this is stuff that they promised for us with the original Switch.
Mm-hmm. And it's stuff I fully believe is capable of the Switch.
Like, people are going to lose their minds if you try to sell this on the Pro. Like, if it's, oh, well, you can have the proper operating system that we promised. Oh, by the way, those virtual console that we promised you, the NES and Super NES and the online functionality, we'll make it actually work. Like, we'll have it work online without it being a slideshow.
I don't think they're going to do things that are going to upset fans too much, I'm hoping. Like,
I don't think,
for example,
they can do.
If they introduce themes, I think they'll update the base Switch to still have more themes. They just might not be able to use
themes are possible. There's absolutely nothing stopping the Switch from having themes power-wise. It's not an issue. The 3DS has themes that animate. It's not the Switch's power. It's Nintendo not wanting to do anything.
The Switch has themes, animated themes already. If you, like, again, the hacking community has done it and not had any issue putting themes on the system.
Well,
the OS is literally Nintendo's fault, and they don't feel like fixing it, so they don't. It's the same with online. They just sit there, they go, oh, we don't care about this feature. Most of our fans don't seem to care about this feature. They're buying it anyways. We're not fixing it. It's the same thing they've been doing with online for years.
And again, they don't have to, which is why they're not doing it.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care to fix it, so they don't.
Like, yeah, it's a nice touch, but at the end of the day, it's like, how, like, do they want to put more into, like, they're just going to keep going with stability, but it's like, are they going to put some resources into making themes and giving us better operating system? Or are they going to put those resources into possibly, hopefully, fixing the eShop?
God, the eShop.
You know, like they have other. Like,
they haven't felt like doing much to that either. They have updated the eShop a bit. It's better than it was at launch.
I want to go back. I want to go back to the interactivity of the Switch, though, right? Because, like, what do you guys think could that be? Like, do you think is anything like my take is maybe like the Joy-Cons there's like improved controllers, right? Maybe there's a little bit more feedback they offer.
Yeah, they might improve HD Rumble somehow.
Yeah,
maybe
I can see
office
that.
Analog controllers, maybe. Please, analog sticks.
I don't see it because then
I don't see basic functionality that should already be in it. This is when you know, like, Nintendo.
Well, at the same time, like, if they do that, that would be more money for them because then they could release new improved Joy-Cons to be purchased, new improved Pro Controllers to be purchased while still having the old ones out there. So there's more things for people to buy. So from that perspective, maybe they do it for sure. Maybe, like, one cool thing they could do is if, like, all right, again, this is more like pipe dream sort of scenario here, not like an expectation. But let's say this dock that the Switch Plus comes with is actually like an enhanced dock with some innards in there that maybe does offer some sort of upscaling to improve the visuals a little bit when it's docked in there. But also, it has like better, I don't know, like it has like some sort of like Bluetooth technology similar to what we had on the Wii U, where you could do some casting from portable Switch to the dock. That way, you can just kind of cast it onto your television as opposed to walking over and putting it in there. That's something that some people have sort of felt a natural inclination to do. I have when I've played my Switch portably in the living room, like, hey guys, check this out. And I'm like, oh, well, I gotta walk over. Is it like a big necessary thing? No. But if they were gonna go back into the dock and like make a better version of the dock with more technology there, that's something that I think they might consider doing.
I don't know, because the whole purpose of the dock is that it allows it to have a better power supply. And
well, this would be a different Switch, right? This would be an enhanced Switch, and
then you're still running it on the battery and trying to you're trying to run it at the docked levels of power.
Well, I imagine if you did that, it'd probably run that.
Like maybe there'd be a disclaimer is like, keep in mind this is not the full visual improvement. Like, but they could still do it.
It probably could. I would see more along the line if they were going to do more with Bluetooth. I would imagine seeing them do like Bluetooth headphones.
For real.
That'd be nice.
Maybe
imagine what if they came
don't
with the system.
disconnect in like 2 feet from the system.
What if the Switch Plus package came with Bluetooth headphones and they were also sold separately for those who do not buy the Switch Plus?
I don't know if they would include Bluetooth headphones, just because I think that unnecessarily raises the pricing.
But this is, I guess my point is this might be more of a luxury item. Like they're still gonna sell the
my
base
thing
Switch
is just
and
like
Switch Lite.
I think just increasing the cost of building the internals is something like Nintendo doesn't take losses, and they want huge profit margins like most of the time.
Yeah.
So I just don't see them releasing something with headphones because that's going to drive up it's going to drive your profits down so much. They're going to be losing money on that system unless they make it like $400.
Yeah.
So like headphones, like what are you going to put it in a 50 pair of headphones right there and jack the price up $50 for a system that's already going to be more expensive than unless they lower the price of the Switch to like $250 and make this $300? I don't know.
Bluetooth headphones in. I mean, I have a pair of Bluetooth headphones that I use for sleeping. They're in a sleep mask. They were $20 Canadian.
So it's like, well, like,
I mean, they make them. It's just like at that point, why even include like your crappy headphones that aren't good?
It's a cheap way to get into Bluetooth headphones.
Yeah, but I just don't see why you need to bundle it in with the Switch Pro.
I don't think you do, but I think you can do it without it costing too much money. I think they can still make money off.
I mean, you can. It's just like at that point, why? There's gonna be it's gonna be like a weird niche thing. Like most people aren't gonna want these crappy headphones included in their thing. I mean, some people might find use of it. They're like broke and the Switch is all they can afford. So it came with headphones too. Like, what's the use case scenario here where people just don't buy their own headphones? Like most people. Why wouldn't you just buy your own headphones separately? Even if you wanted a cheap pair, just buy your own cheap pair of headphones. You don't need to bundle it in.
Yep, I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm just saying, like, I think they could do it. Like, I don't think they will. They could. I would like to see the functionality of it included.
Yeah,
nice.
Like, you just have better Bluetooth. They do have some options of things they can fix. Again, like I don't think you can really do much with the operating system because if you do it, you're kind of slighting the early adopters being the first 4 years.
Yeah,
that's not good. The input lag can be fixed.
Quality of life improvements. If you look at the new 3DS, it was all about quality of life improvements. They included like that additional analog stick, more shoulder buttons.
Which is why they'll include analog triggers, because that analog stick, same thing.
But the thing is that you have.
I don't know if they would.
I see quality of changes, just not that. Say it again, Dumo.
The Joy-Cons are already packed. Like those things. Like I don't think they're going to want to make a bigger, beefier Joy-Con. They probably should. Just as an aside for something. Like something more to hold on to. But I don't think
they'll want to make change it.
I think the Joy-Con themselves, like we heard back on the Switch reveal, companies, I think it was like some people from Capcom and a couple other companies that were like actually in contact with Nintendo during this. When they announced the price, they went, "Wow, I didn't think they could do that for that price." Like knowing what it was, I didn't
There's
think
a lot of
do
technology in there, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you've ever seen the Joy-Con opened up, there is not a lot of space in there.
No,
so that's a complete redesign. And you got to be careful when redesigning because then the Joy-Cons would also have to be able to go on the rails of the original Switch, or you're going to run into marketing problems.
Well, I mean, to include analog triggers, you probably don't need to change the shape. I mean, I don't know for 100%. At least not as far as you might make it. I think you mostly just make this back part a little different. I'm not showing it to the camera properly. Just this back part a little thicker because really you just need the space for the trigger would obviously come up a little more. Honestly, they probably wouldn't even need to make it that much bigger because it's already like it curves down a little bit.
But then you got
honestly, if they just make this part a little bit bigger like that, you fit in the components for
like
it.
How many games are gonna take advantage of that? Like they're not gonna start designing their games to use analog triggers. But
there's a lot of third-party games that use them already normally.
On the 3DS, you could use a touchscreen as a way to control your camera. The additional analog stick was just kind of like a better way to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't understand the difference. What's the difference between this?
I guess there is.
It's just a better way to do it. Like if you wanted to play like racing games on Switch, horrible. Like any kind of racing sim on Switch would be terrible because you're gonna be either slamming on the gas and brake or not having it on. It's just on and off. Like imagine if you're trying to drive your car and you just had to either slam on it or not at all. Those are your only options. Were just full pedal to the metal or nothing.
It worked well back in the day.
I want me a new F-Zero. If next year there's a Switch Plus and they're like, hey, there are some games that take better advantages. Breath of the Wild 2 with better visuals. F-Zero NX with actual analog triggers and also awesome
Well, I mean,
visuals.
technically, there's no reason why they couldn't release controllers with analog triggers that work for both.
Yeah,
I feel like they would have to, and if they did that, then
which means more sales. People buy more controllers.
It's not really selling a new version of it. You're just selling new Joy-Con.
No.
Well, those Joy-Cons could also maybe have like some sort of Bluetooth technology for Bluetooth earphones, right? Or maybe even just an audio jack. Like there are other little things they could do besides just analog triggers.
Got a Pro controller with an audio jack and Bluetooth, like headphone support. Be amazing. I'd buy that.
Jim, what you were saying, so I didn't hear you.
Oh, just put in like a little hole for a microphone or something, like 3DS, just to have it.
Yeah, be great.
I mean, it's got a microphone jack already in the system.
Yeah, I don't know if you could fit a headphone jack onto the normal Joy-Cons. Maybe in the right Joy-Con if you maybe had one that didn't have IR.
Maybe put in the left one, since the right one has the IR.
That's true. What is in the
Why
left
not?
one to take up that space? I'm not sure.
Nothing. Like,
Unless they use,
well, it has the NFC chip.
yeah.
Which,
True.
At the time,
I don't think that takes up that much space though.
I feel like you could fit it. How much space does an audio jack take?
audio jack is enough for it to get dropped from cell phones.
Yeah. Well, the cell phone thing was
They're trying to pack more into them.
yeah. There was other reasons, but yeah, that's kind of the main one.
I can see a USB-C jack going into them, but I would
USB-C?
like an actual audio headphone jack.
Well, something.
Why would you have a USB-C on a controller though, other than for charging? Like they already have the USB-C
like
on the
before
charger.
Oh, that's an idea. What if they were to update because the sides of the Joy-Cons, or they just update it with like a USB-C port, so that's an alternate way to charge a controller, and it also has support for an audio jack or something. Like, what if there's like a little audio jack jungle for that?
It's also a bigger port, so it's like less space for that. It just doesn't make sense for me, like personally, because most people, like, even though phones, especially iPhones, have moved on from the headphone jack, like most things still use headphone jack. Like it's still the standard. USB-C is not the standard for headphones at all. Most people just use adapters on their headphones with headphone jacks, and they just use an adapter for their phone.
Like
or they use Bluetooth. They either use the adapter or the Bluetooth. Most people don't buy
going away from the audio jack stuff. And if you don't have a dongle or what comes in the box, you usually just have Bluetooth headphones.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I'm just saying that feel like it's definitely possible that in a Pro or Deluxe or Plus version of controllers for the Switch, giving us a way to plug in some sort form of headphones or earphones so we don't have to like have our TV on the entire time would be nice. You know, like you can do it on the other systems. Why can't you do it on the Switch? Like, sure, you can plug in earphones on your Switch, but if you're playing in dock mode, there's no way to like plug into your system to listen to the game. Unless you're sitting right next to your Switch.
Use just a really long headphone extender cable.
I've done it. Like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, these are all things they could fix with a Switch Plus, just like quality of life improvements.
Right.
I'm just wondering if they'll wait for controller-specific improvements until the next Switch.
I don't know. I don't see them.
I don't know.
Well, it could give us an idea as to what they're sort of thinking.
I feel like they do it anyways if they were gonna do it. If they were gonna fix the Joy-Cons, they'd do it already because those things have to be like
they've been getting sued and stuff over that. So
so I feel like they wouldn't wait for a new system to be like, oh, here's our new and improved Joy-Con that isn't garbage.
So let's transition a little bit. Games. Supposedly, if the Switch revision is coming out next year, there would be a lot of more games coming out next year. Are you guys both on the same page with me in terms of thinking that 2021 is going to be, if not the peak year on the Switch, a significantly stronger year than this year, and a lot of those games are going to help to support the release of this Switch revision?
I mean, 100%. There's no way that 2021 is going to be as bad as 2020. It's just not going to happen. All these games that are getting pushed or probably weren't even meant to come out this year. They're gonna be coming out eventually. So next year kind of seems like the way to go. And yeah, I mean, we've talked about it at length about how they have this kind of cycle going, where every other year it's a little bit slower than the next year, mostly because they're winding up, they're getting those development times finished, and development is on a cycle just normally. That's just how it works. Like, a lot of it isn't Nintendo like deciding it, it's just how development cycles work. So yeah, 100% next year is going to be great. Is it because they're pushing a big Switch revision? I don't know that. I mean, obviously if you want to sell a system, you want games to sell with it.
According to Bloomberg, that is part of the
I don't believe anything Bloomberg is saying.
Well,
I mean, in Bloomberg in general, I don't think is the most. I mean, I'm not super in the know about Bloomberg.
They've had reports in the past about Switch revisions coming out, and they haven't come entirely true. I don't think it's because they're lying or they don't have real information, but that doesn't mean that the information.
I think Bloomberg takes their information that they do have and then speculates and then puts it out.
There is that
kind of a rumor.
There's interpretation from the information they may give.
I feel like a lot of people who have inside information have a little bit of the picture, and they speculate on that little bit of the picture.
And they tell us their conclusion.
Do I believe he has real information? Yes. Do I think there's enough to actually say it? No. I don't see them actually doing some sort of a Switch Pro next year. I could see them doing what they have already done with the Switch revision, where it just makes it run that much smoother, easier. I could see them going to a chip, like just transitioning over to parts that are equivalent but cheaper to manufacture.
Which is what they did with the battery life switch. Literally the whole point of it. The battery life being better was a side thing. The problem was that the X1 was getting too expensive to manufacture. It's actually cheaper to make that version that's better. So
it was also
they just moved on.
Not a known chip that everyone had, and it
pretty issues. That processing that it uses, the way it's built, not many places actually make it. I forget exactly how many nanometers it is, but you guys most of the people in the comments, that's an irrelevant figure anyways. But the point is that specific process that's used to being built is something that was very experimental and didn't catch on. So if they moved to something more standard with the X2, which is what the Switch revision, the battery life revision is based on, as well as the Switch Lite.
So do you guys think this will at least be marketed like a revision, or is it going to be like a quiet revision?
I think it's going to be quiet.
I don't think they need another quiet revision. That doesn't make sense of why they would do that. Now that FCC filing, which is separate in my opinion, because they already have the two data mined SoCs that were compatible. I'm thinking this is separate. That seems to indicate they're updating dev kits. My opinion is they just want to put the X2 variant, or what they call it, the X1 Plus, I think, is the technical way they want you to see it.
Sure.
In the dev kit, so they don't have to keep manufacturing X1s for them.
I think it's just standardizing the dev kits to what is actually being used.
Right.
Weren't they also adding a little bit more? So they're basically just
they changed the
dev kit.
Yeah, they said they're changing the memory, but I imagine they're just changing it to the low power DDR4 X or whatever it's called that they changed in the Switch Lite and battery vision, which is again something that's cheaper and has better it's lower power draw, so you can kind of I guess it's useful in dev kits if they. I don't know if devs even really like focus. I imagine they do as far as portable play, like focus on how much battery like they're taking up. I'm not sure if that's really a concern, but I guess that kind of makes it more equal.
Then on top of that, if they're revising the dev kits now, do you really think they're going to have games out next year with these new dev kits that are going to be actually like enough to be like a Switch Pro game?
Well, no, but I don't think that really matters because they launched the new 3DS and had like one exclusive that actually used the full advantage of the system. I think it would be like that, where mostly they just rely on developers to go in and patch their games. Like, okay, like dynamic resolution games, they run better. Games that are wobbly frame rates, they run better.
Yeah.
If the developer wants to go in and fix it afterwards, they can. Otherwise, it's just
games will
moving
run
forward.
naturally better on the system. That's what I kind of expect, just like the new 3DS.
Yeah, the new 3DS, they did not like really make a big deal of that as far as developers focusing on that hardware. At least not at first.
Again, and if they were to release a Switch Pro, like I know a lot of people have this fantasy of they released a Switch Pro, it's more powerful, it's as powerful as the PS4 now, and we'll be able to get all these ports. No one's porting to a Switch Pro. You don't have like. You have 60 million Switches more? You're not...
I think that's like 50,
there's not going to be any... I don't think there's going to be any exclusive games. They're not going to alienate fans like that.
They tried that on the new 3DS, didn't work, and then they stopped, like, immediately.
No. It'd be one thing if they're releasing first party for it. Okay, like, fine. But this idea that people have that they're now going to be able to get all of the ports that they run before it. Not happening because there's not the user base. The install base doesn't exist for it, and like day one, install base is 0. So the only games that would come exclusively for it would be first party, which would be kind of silly if you dropped Breath of the Wild exclusively for it. It doesn't work because you have all the old systems, and then you have your third parties. Well, they're not going to do it because they want the install base, or else the only other way is if Nintendo paid them to. And again, that's a lot of money to pay them.
And I mean, there's other
limited sales.
There's other bottlenecks in the Switch that aren't going to be upgraded, or at least not that much. If you look at other like enhanced systems, like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Series X, what did they upgrade? The GPU and the RAM. The CPU, they had like minor overclocks on, but it's mostly the same. As far as what I understand, now I'm not a developer, but a lot of console-focused games, from what I understand. Now, this isn't something that PC does, so this is third party. It's a little bit iffy here on whether or not they do this. But at least for the Switch, and this is the same for docked and handheld mode, it always runs the CPU exactly the same. Never changes, so that game logic's always the exact same, because certain games rely on it being consistent. Like, if you have game logic that's different, it can run the game differently at different CPU speeds. Now, that's only if the game is programmed that way. That's really a console thing. PC isn't really a thing, so I don't think third parties will be affected. But Nintendo probably won't upgrade the CPU that much, just like the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X didn't. It'll probably be the same. So you're still going to have bottlenecks in other areas that aren't going to allow these ports to work. If they didn't work in the original, they're not going to work on the enhance. I think it's going to be something that runs better, but it's not going to be something that's so game-changing that now games that wouldn't work just suddenly are, just enough processing power for it to work. That's not going to happen.
And this is another thing I want to sort of talk about here. So I think like a lot of people place a lot of value and importance on the Switch getting the next generation ports. I don't think it matters that much. You look at the Switch's life cycle so far. We are approaching that 4-year anniversary. This March will be the 4-year anniversary. Switch has been out for about 3.5 years at this point. And we're not getting the day and date multi-platform games. There was a couple games that we had the hope of. There was Mortal Kombat. Sure. Doom Eternal was supposed to be that, and we don't know when that's coming out now, the Switch version. And the Switch has been fine. We haven't really been getting those day and date multi-platform games And it's really just been older games that have been successful on other platforms that developers either decide to downscale, or it's games that aren't that ambitious, graphically speaking, that come to the Switch. And the Switch has a slew of indie games, a lot of older games. Like, when I say older, I don't mean like classic games. I mean like games that came out like a year or two ago. The developers now have the time to port over. Things like that, or just games that aren't very ambitious graphically, like the Kingdom Hearts rhythm game, for example. Like, it's probably going to be a great game, but it's not like an open world 4K game. It's using pretty old looking visuals there. Point is, the Switch is fine with all of that, and Nintendo games, it's doing just fine. It may end up being one of, if not the best selling Nintendo system ever in terms of sales. Like, it's doing just fine. So when the next generation systems come, they're not going to really need those games to come out immediately. Some developers may scale down some of those games, as we've seen with The Witcher 3 and Doom and games like that. I don't think it's really going to be an issue, because we haven't been getting it yet, and it's still fine. I don't think Nintendo's going to rush out to get a system that's significantly more powerful so they can get next-gen ports. Because what happens then? Those next-gen ports run on the new Switch and not the old Switch to alienate fans? That's not going to happen either.
Right.
So
They can't.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a platform that's coming out with the current technology going into CPUs, with far more power, more cores, more like there is nothing right now that I know of that can run at a CPU level what is going to be in the as a mobile chip that can run what is going to be in the Xbox Series X and the PS5.
Yeah, for sure,
It
100%.
just doesn't exist. It's not possible, and it's not going to happen.
I mean, the biggest
But in
things that
2023
we know where focus is for the next gen systems, where keeping heat down, like the entire design is focused around cooling and power. Those are their two big designs on that's why the Xbox Series X looks so different and why the PS5 looks so different. It's because it's all focused on power and cooling. Because those chips get so hot and they take so much power. Now in a few years down the line, will there be something that's weaker but comparable enough on a mobile chipset? Yeah, sure, in like 3-4 years, but not now.
And then
It just doesn't exist.
we have to also remember that the new systems are coming out on GPU technology that isn't publicly released yet.
No, yeah. Their SSDs literally are better than PC. Like, it just whoops mine, and I have, like, really good stuff.
that's cool.
The Switch was possible to run Xbox and PlayStation ports at this point in time is because they were lacking in CPU power. The GPU, everyone was focusing on the GPU. The GPU doesn't mean as much as you think it does, because you have to run the game logic. And if you can run the game logic and therefore the engine and the game itself, if you can run the game itself, they can scale back everything graphically all the way back down to freaking 2D if they have to run the game.
240p, baby.
But it is technically possible.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't run the engine of the game, if you cannot run the base code of the game, the game is not running.
If you are CPU bound, it's horrible. You never want to be CPU bound. You're going to get stutters. The game's going to literally like freeze up. GPU bound, yeah, you might drop some frames, but you can lower the resolution. GPU is highly scalable. CPU, unless you start reducing the amount of enemies on screen, things like that, you can get some with like reduced draw distances and things. There are CPU things you can scale back without actually changing how the game plays. But for the most part, you really just need to actually overhaul the entire like way the game works for you to get like significant CPU stuff out of it.
The whole purpose of the Switch, like again, their CPU isn't on par with the base Xbox. Base Xbox One, but it is just slightly below. So it's
close enough.
Do those, like it's close enough that you can get those ports. That's why they're possible. When you're moving up to the next gen, we're talking about 8-core CPUs that are running on technology that is apparently coming out at the beginning of next year on GPUs that's coming out possibly later this year. Like we're talking about technology that isn't out yet. Mobile is not. Yes, mobile is great and it's moving incredibly quickly. ARM is moving at incredible paces. It is not caught up or overtaking right now.
So the point is, we're just
Switch
not going to
come out.
Yeah.
I 100% believe that they will be able to run the next gen ports. It'll be about the same as the Switch. You're
In
gonna have issues
2023.
not quite as good, but they're going to be able to run them. Hopefully, they will. The GPU side, they will have managed to scale things down again, and they'll have actual proper ray tracing on the ARM chip. These are all things that are going to be possible, especially with NVIDIA, who is absolutely phenomenal at their R&D. Like,
Yeah.
mind-blowingly good. I honestly think that's going to happen, but again,
Question
they're
for you
looking at
guys.
the cycle for the Switch.
What's the earliest you think we get a Switch 2? Not a Switch Revision, the next generation system that could
Switch
potentially
2?
run these games. Or Super Switch.
I mean, the
64,
earliest,
Cube,
the earliest that it would be possible, or the earliest that they should. I mean, probably in 2022 the technology will be there. I'm just not sure how expensive it'll be.
I think best case scenario, Switch 2, next gen Switch, whatever it's gonna be called, would be holiday 2022. But I'm thinking 2023. If it's holiday 2022, maybe then Metroid Prime 4 is like a cross gen game, which some people are speculating. I could kind of see that. But basically, because I think there's got to be like a little bit of a gap between a revision and the next system. It's looking like it's a bit of a 2 to 2.5 year kind of gap, right? So 2017, March 2017, we had the first Switch, right? And the Switch Lite came out September 2019. So that's about a year and a half, right? So let's move another year and a half past that. So we're about a year past we're entering September now. So we're about a year removed from the Switch Lite release, approaching that. Half a year later, which is when these reports are suggesting, is for the next Switch revision. So assuming they follow that pattern, the next year and a half, that would put us at a holiday 2022 release. That's kind of like, that's when I think it would kind of make sense for it to happen, because if a revision's coming out next year that people are going to buy, that they're going to market, if I'm right, and it's launching alongside a Breath of the Wild 2, for example, they're going to push that for a little while. There has to be some time in between that and the next system. I feel like at minimum has to be a year and a half. I feel like it would be better if it were 2 years, though.
I feel like they could pull it off in 2022. I feel like they'd probably wait till 2023 just to have it
Probably.
cheaper.
They could do a March 2023 thing. That'd be great. They just keep the March time slot. It works for them, you know. So,
let's see, 2022 would be 4 years after Turing launched, which is their latest architecture for NVIDIA.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm gonna go into some tech here that I'm gonna try to make it like if I say something and it's just gone completely over your head, then let me know.
There.
Okay. To make this a little bit easier, so what we were looking at, so let's talk in terms of GPUs that are fairly well known. We can talk our 10 series, your 1080, 1070, 1060, 1050, your 20 series, which is out right now and is top dog right now, and then you have the 30 series, which is set to be announced at the beginning of this month and start releasing up until
September 1st, baby. That's when we're gonna get the announcements.
If you want to put into perspective, like the generation, so like I have a 1060. 1060 works great for 1080p games now. It works just fine.
Yeah, for 1080p it's fine.
Yeah, for 1080p. Your 20 series is where they started with ray tracing. It doesn't do it very well, but it does do it. Your 30 series is where ray tracing is, like, this is the big focus right now, is going to be ray tracing and pushing ray tracing. And we can also see the next gen consoles where they are pushing ray tracing as well. So the two companies are going to be battling in that. So
let's say they usually put a new architecture, and they are, I think, I don't remember what the name of it is, but I believe they're actually moving to a new architecture with the 30 series. I mean, they generally do every about two to 4 years. So they generally have a mobile chip with the architecture, like that same architecture available within like a year and a half to 2 years. So say by like 2022, that will be in a mobile chip. But I think they'll wait another year because Nintendo never uses the products that just released. It's usually a year or two old. I mean, the X1 came out in 2015. They're still using it in 2017, even the X2 was out. And I think the Xavier even was out at that time or was about to release.
So it was very close to the same amount of time. It was really close to the timing.
So they definitely never use well, the thing is the Switch also I feel is kind of experimental because they didn't know if it was going to do well. Like they just come off the Wii U, they weren't putting in a ton of stuff to make a custom chip. So maybe that's not very indicative, but typically consoles in general, unless it's going for something super expensive like the Xbox Series X and PS5, use parts that are a year or two old. So yeah, I'm thinking 2023 sounds about right.
One other thing just to kind of mention as far as like them using older technology. Now, back in the days when the Wii had just released, again, I'm not going to be able to find an article on this, but there was an article that they were talking about Nintendo is at their best when they are when they take old technology and use it in creative and new ways. That's what the Wii was. They're taking old technology and they were using it in a creative way.
Got an idea.
The Switch, same thing, a little bit more modernized. For sure, but the same thing. They've done it in older systems. It was them using older technology and finding a new way to package it and market it. That's everything they've been really successful in has been in being very creative.
Absolutely. Which is why I now have a new theory. So, remember how the data mine had two different preliminary support things for a Switch, right? And one of them included a second screen. Here's my idea. This is a VR system, but it's not just any VR system. So, Dumo, to your point, what I think makes sense is that they're going to reuse old technology, but with a different spin on it. So what's going to happen is that in 2021, Nintendo's going to go back to an old dusty warehouse they have and pull out every Virtual Boy that they made and duct tape them on to their Switch lights and send them out.
There you go.
What's gonna happen? Bringing back the Virtual Boy.
Now, I will say though, the second screen, we've already seen that, have we not? Where you put what game was it? Was it Mario Party? You put the screens beside each other to create the maps.
Yeah, but this SoC came out way after Mario Party, and it includes like an SoC, like a second screen on the same chip.
Yeah, we saw the
not
pattern
two different screens working together.
Yeah, there was a pattern for that, and it turned out, but this is a separate thing. Yeah. I don't know if it's kind of interesting. I don't know what that would entail exactly. Maybe it's VR. Maybe it's casting. You know.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
I doubt that though.
I wouldn't be too surprised if one of them, because they both look pretty standard chips. Like neither of them, and I've said this before, neither of them look like anything I would think would be for a Switch Plus, other than just the fact that you can overclock them way more because they're way more power efficient. So you can get power out of them that way. But they're still pretty much, we haven't seen everything about them. There's still information on there that's not. Like, we don't see the exact RAM counts or the exact clocks for anything, so it could be different. But it's still based on the X1 Plus. So I'm wondering if one of them is just the update for the dev kit and the other one is a VR system of some kind.
Maybe. We won't know until Nintendo starts making these announcements. But I kind of want to move on from the Switch Vision talk. It's all still related. But let me just pop this up again. This is from Bloomberg. We read it earlier in the podcast, but I'm just going to read it one more time. The release of the upgraded Switch would be coupled with or followed by a slew of games from Nintendo itself and related outside studios. That's all I wanted to point out. So, Nintendo itself. Maybe we get Mario Kart 9. Maybe we get a Prime Trilogy. Maybe we get Breath of the Wild 2. Stuff like that would be great. But also outside studios. Third parties, for example. When the Switch Lite came out in September, what did we get? We got Dragon Quest XI's, a big third-party release on the Switch, one of the biggest ones. And it was published by Nintendo, but it was a partnership. It was a big deal. And we had Link's Awakening. So maybe we have something similar going on for this Switch revision that comes out spring 2021, right? Maybe it's Breath of the Wild 2 or something else from Nintendo, but maybe also there's another major third-party release. And as we've been talking about, a lot of the third-party releases on the Switch have been a lot of ports and stuff. There have been too many like dedicated, fully ground-up built games, exclusive third-party stuff. Like there hasn't been too much of that. But rumor has it there is one on the way, and this one might be the best one. This one might rhyme with
Just say it.
Just okay. Monster Hunter, baby. Monster Hunter might finally be coming. Now it's official information that Capcom is working on a Monster Hunter for Switch. That's not really under debate right now. That's confirmed. We know, right? Am I right about that? That Capcom did confirm they're working on Monster Hunter for Switch.
No, they have never specifically said that they are working on a Monster Hunter for Switch. When Monster Hunter World came out, they were asked if they would port it. They said, why would we port it? We feel like it would be better to just do a ground up version for the Switch. Mm-hmm. There was the art that had Next in it. The thing that really puts it as far as, it was the anniversary art, the messages from the developers. The thing that puts it apart is when Monster Hunter World was being announced, there was a leak that no one believed, because why are they going to do a Monster Hunter World that's Western based, a new Monster Hunter Western based on the PS4? It's going to be practically exclusive to them, and it's going to be called Monster Hunter World, and it's going to be Monster Hunter 5. That all came true. In that leak, and this was like months before, by the way, in that leak, that said that it being on PlayStation, they wanted to put it on Nintendo's new console, but due to the contract, there was some way where, for some reason, something in the contract made it so they weren't allowed to. And because of that, there was some turmoil at Capcom, and that they immediately started working on a Monster Hunter exclusive to the Switch. That was said at the same time as they called out Monster Hunter World, what it was going to be, how it was going to be played, the fact that it was going to be Western based and was really going to be pushing the West. And that's basically where it was. And that everything except for the Switch has come true. Everything. And that was way before no one even knew that the Monster Hunter World was even being made. No one had any idea of that. No one knew it was going to the PlayStation.
It'd be interesting if they started it way back then, though, and it hasn't released, because that was a while ago.
Which is why the partner showcases might be really interesting this year.
So, hold on a second. I just want to point out this tweet that was from a shareholders meeting a while ago for Monster Hunter. This person said, I went to Capcom's general meeting of shareholders. Although the content was documented, it seems that the Switch version of Monster Hunter World, these are these translations, is desperate because it was said that it cannot be done with the Switch. This is about Monster Hunter World that can't be done on Switch. However, the Switch seems to deploy Monster Hunter with the Switch. It's a weird translation, but people's interpretation was that Capcom may be working on something else Monster Hunter related on the Switch. So, Dumo, could you tell me that part again, though, about how you said there was a leak for Monster Hunter World? What else did it entail?
That there was, it basically just called, so everyone was expecting Monster Hunter 5. It was Monster Hunter World. It was going to be called World, but it was actually going to be Monster Hunter 5, which, by the way, is legit. It is Monster Hunter 5. It was going to be Western based. It was going to make changes to suck in the West and be more popular in the West. That is very true. It created turmoil at Capcom. They did not like the idea of slighting Nintendo because for some reason they were not allowed to put it on a Nintendo console. So something contractually stops them from putting it on the console. And because of that, and because of, like, again, they do really like Nintendo and the Japanese base and the handhelds, and they wanted it on Switch. So they started working on something Switch specific. There's actually been another leak since then that said that the Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate port that we pushed for really hard for the West, and thank goodness we did, actually slowed down their development on that as well.
So let's go to the rumor now for what's being said. Let me see if I can find. Okay, I'm just going to read this tweet right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I haven't read it yet, actually. I just read the headline. So, in other news, Resident Evil 8 will most likely be great. Resident Evil 4 is in a bit of a worrying position right now. Silent Hill is still in development. Something Shenmue-related will be revealed in 1 to 2 weeks. A PS5 event, first half of September. Monster Hunter Switch is being revealed soon. Have a good day. To elaborate on two things, Monster Hunter Switch is running on a Switch-compatible version of the Resident Evil engine, which is why I've been posting where I've been talking about it for the last few months. It's supposed to be the new re-engine logo. Okay, that's super interesting. So this will be running on the re-engine.
Special version of the RE engine.
for the Switch. So I don't think they've used it yet on a Switch.
We've never seen RE Engine.
No, they have not, and we haven't seen a Monster Hunter done on RE Engine because it was still empty frameworks for World.
Yeah.
So this is.
I imagine if they did make another Monster Hunter, it would be on the RE Engine. If it was for the other consoles, I don't know.
Ground up for the Switch, baby. A ground up Switch game. Oh man. Like, I'm excited.
I mean, if you use like a heavily modified version of the RE Engine, I mean, I don't know how scalable the RE Engine is. We haven't really seen it be that scalable. Honestly, it kind of just runs terribly on the Xbox One and PS4, and then runs nice on the enhanced machines and PC. It's kind of the power ladder we've seen. So
how old is RE Engine, anyways? Do we know?
RE Engine? I believe it was first made for. Was it? I think they had it. Couldn't have been the Resident Evil 2 remake, could it? I know it's pretty recent. Let me look it up.
But what I was thinking when I heard when I read a compatible with this version compatible with Switch, they might have done things like basically taken a lot of the base code and changed it around to get rid of things from like working with next gen. So obviously you're not gonna have your ray tracing or anything like that, and it might have specific target powers or power targets that it focuses on, as well as the switching back and forth from the docking. So it might just be an engine where they took a lot of the base code and then they altered a bunch of things, is what I was thinking it would be.
The RE Engine came out in 2017. Apparently, it was first used for Resident Evil 7, but I believe it was heavily modified after that. I don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure it was heavily modified after that for all the featured games. Resident Evil 7 was kind of its like test time for the engine, which we've also not seen on Switch other than streamed to the system.
Yeah, so we haven't seen it on the Switch yet.
And I will say it's one of like the most advanced engines we've seen this generation. So I don't know, like I guess they could change a lot of things and try to make it like more scalable for
They
Switch.
might have scaled a bunch of things back, and like it might just be that they separated the versions just so they could target the Switch better with it, because I would imagine that they are going to be using it for a few more years for a few more games for
Hope
Switch.
They make an actual Resident Evil game for Switch. That'd be great.
It would be nice, but apparently they're having issues. So they said the engine works great on Switch, because I believe that was in further later on tweets. He said the engine's working very well on Switch, but they cannot port with the engine. So it's going to have
too heavily modified.
It has to be built ground up, right?
You're not going to be able to port to it.
That makes sense. Any kind of version of the RE Engine that works on Switch well is not going to be compatible with its normal self.
Yeah,
it's going to be too heavily modified.
Also put it into a place where they stop messing with the engine, and they're like, "This is what we're going to do," as they continue working on RE Engine for next gen, because there's going to be a lot more involved with that.
Yeah, I mean the RE Engine at this point is, I mean even Resident Evil 7 didn't. It was kind of iffy on the base consoles, but the later Resident Evil games it was clear that engine was more suited to something with the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X's power level. So the fact that they're getting something that might run well on Switch, it's going to be way different.
I just want to point one thing out. This is a rumor, right? This is from an industry insider. You know, it may not turn out to be true, but we're gonna, according to the rumor, we'll find out this month. September. So if September goes by past the Tokyo Game Show and nothing's announced, then maybe assume it's fake. But just take it all with a grain of salt. But either way, I mean, Duma, you agree that eventually Capcom has to put a Monster Hunter on Switch. Like, why wouldn't they do that?
Japan would kill them if they didn't.
Right, like Switch is the best-selling console in Japan. That's where Monster Hunter really thrives. Like, it just makes... Like, it wouldn't shock me if this Monster Hunter for Switch makes more money than Monster Hunter World.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Mainly due to... I don't think it will sell as much as Monster Hunter World, obviously. Because, 16, 17 million units is insane.
Yeah, it's sold a lot.
But
and again,
cheaper
Switch.
Development cost.
Yeah. Well, then again, they probably put a lot of effort in R&D into adapting, if this is true, the RE engine to work on Switch.
Well, this is gonna be expensive,
So-
but it's as
But at the
expensive as
same time,
Monster
do
Hunter World.
they include that into the Monster Hunter sales? Like, as that, do they? Because when you go to investors, you're not going to say it's like, well, Monster Hunter World would have made us this much, but we spent this much on the engine. They're going to separate that anyways, because the engine will be able to be used for games going forward in the future. So
Right, I'm just saying for that specific game, the profit margins are going to be lower. I'm not saying that that's going to impact their decision or not.
Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense. Like it makes a ton of sense to drop this right now.
Now, when does it come out? Do you think I'm right and it's going to come out around the release for a Switch revision? Not like day one, but close.
I'm going to do something here that I hate doing, and I'm going to get my hopes up.
Oh man.
I
all it took is for me to bring up Monster Hunter to get you in that mode.
Yeah, this is the one. Now I'm not going to be mad if it doesn't happen, because this
reality.
Like, again, we've never heard anything of this, and just because there's a rumor doesn't mean that it's real. It doesn't mean that. Now I will say that this guy has nailed Capcom rumors in the past. I did some digging into it, and there's people talking. He's
a Capcom insider.
From Capcom long before he's talked about turmoil in the company before people have left it, and then Capcom wouldn't say anything. He's like, well, I said this months ago. You know, like this guy knows people inside Capcom. I don't know how, I don't know what but he has real information. Now, again, whether or not his information is right, and if it changes, that's
the thing. It may be real information, but it can change until it's officially announced. You don't know what's actually going to happen.
Now,
so,
back after that first partner showcase, I did a video saying that I think there was more to that showcase than people thought. The games were bigger than you thought. They made comments that it was good. They were going to continue doing the showcase. There was going to be more the remainder of the year. Then we start hearing about all these ports, and I was thinking, there's no way Nintendo is going in to holiday 2020 with Mario ports, remake of a fairly recent Zelda, a possible Mario Kart, and maybe Metroid. I'm like, there's no way. And I was like, oh, unless they have something massive for holiday that isn't from them. Monster Hunter being announced this month in a partner showcase is as good, especially sales-wise. It is as good and will draw in as many console sales.
Japan.
And don't doubt North America right now.
I mean, that would be for me, if we got Monster Hunter, this is for me, if this is huge. This is Monster Hunter. You take away the Nintendo games, Monster Hunter and Resident Evil are like my favorite third-party stuff. So to get Monster Hunter, like a dedicated, fully grounded one for Switch, I've been waiting for this for years. So my hype levels would be astronomical if this turns out to be true.
Now, there's a few more things with this. So we've talked about a lot on my Discord, because I know you're gonna blame me, Merrick. Just stop. So one thing we've been talking about nonstop is Switch Monster Hunter can't be announced until Iceborne has run its course. Iceborne has been delayed. Iceborne, there's things from Iceborne that have been delayed, but they've just announced their last monster. So if you include the delay from Iceborne, if that delay didn't happen and it wrapped up earlier in the year, they could have announced a Monster Hunter Switch earlier in the year that could possibly release now. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, which by the way is the Switch version here in the West, it has been on sale for 40 to 60% off more often than it has been on regular price on the eShop this year. The subreddit for Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate has been growing very rapidly all year. There are people coming over from World interested, because again, World hasn't been dropping tons of content nonstop. People are like, yes, they love World, but they're like, oh, now I want to see some of the other Monster Hunter. And then they go looking at the Switch. And for a $20 US game, pretty good.
Also, Monster Hunter needs to be portable. You need a portable Monster Hunter. Where is the premier portable Monster Hunter?
This could do it. And again, like Japan will like. I remember when the Switch was coming out, and they were talking about like if you drop Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Monster Hunter year one close together, you break Japan. Like it just goes into chaos, and they almost did it. Except it was a port, but it was a 3DS port of a game. But if it would have been, coming out on the Switch that year, like that, like how.
But let's talk about 2021 then. So what
trying to get it.
So what happens in 2021 though? Like if this Monster Hunter thing is real, I don't expect it to come out this year. That's just my opinion. I think it makes more sense for next year. I'll take it whenever it comes, right? But let's paint this picture for 2021. Monster Hunter as a big third-party game, like a ground that's huge. But then you also have Breath of the Wild 2. You gotta think Bayonetta 3 should come out sometime next year, right? You gotta think.
Oh god, that game.
Right? But even if it's not that, we also have Shin Megami Tensei 5 coming out. That's a huge third-party game. And then, for sure, a Pokemon game is coming out next year. And then, on top of that, you brought it up earlier, we're getting Mario remasters this year. But what about an actual new Mario game? Mario Odyssey 2 could conceivably come out next year. Conceivably.
Pokemon Snap as well.
Pokemon Snaps could be very big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My thing
I'll
is,
throw in
this
Prime
year,
Trilogy. It's a lot. It's a lot of exciting stuff.
My thoughts on this year was that they're going into holiday with a bunch of ports and remasters. They need something else. And if it's going to come from third party, this is the first thing I've heard about. Any sort of rumor from third party that could come out this year that would actually carry a holiday lineup. And Monster Hunter can carry a holiday lineup for the Switch.
That's a good. I'll say
not
the
only,
Mario remasters and Monster Hunter is a good 1-2 punch.
Not only can Monster Hunter carry a holiday for the Switch, but it can also pull some eyes away from the PlayStation. As much as PlayStation fans are going to buy PlayStation, but at the same time, if you're a PlayStation fan and you want to buy a bunch of PlayStation games to go with your new PS5, and then you see like, oh my God, Monster Hunter, there's a new Monster Hunter, you might dip over to the Switch for it. Because there's a lot of people there. It's
definitely in Japan. I think there will
a lot of fans.
Yeah, I think there will be. Yeah, 100% in Japan that would contest sales of the PS5. I think in America it wouldn't really harm sales, but it might help Nintendo as well. Like it's not gonna. I don't think it would impact PS5 sales. Like in Japan,
it's not a
legit. They might get that instead.
It's not a checkmate in Japan.
Not
America,
impacting PS5 sales, but I can see it impacting PS5 game sales. Because people that want the PS5 are going to buy the PS5. I don't care what's coming out this year.
Yeah,
it's going to sell.
I don't care
either way.
I'm buying it.
But if it's a PS5 and 4 games versus PS5 and 2 games, and then split, like pushing your budget a little bit for a Switch and Monster Hunter, I could see that.
Yeah.
And it takes the hype, and that would. Okay. Monster Hunter World, the purpose of Monster Hunter World and Sony paying so much money for it was to get a better footing in Japan. If they try to get a better footing in Japan at launch, again, it's going to sell it no matter what. But are people going to care as much if...
Well, to tell you this Monster Hunter game is real and it comes to Switch soon, that's checkmate. Like, Sony's done. They're done.
The only two that would actually
Nintendo wins.
That would throw a hiccup in the PlayStation. It would be the one thing that I could see the boardroom over at Sony turn around and start cussing and throwing things across a room. It's the only thing they can release that would really do it, because it's the only thing that would actually be able to hurt them.
Yeah.
Oh, and Merrick, don't forget the free publicity that is the Monster Hunter movie.
Is there a Monster Hunter movie coming? Is that
confirmed? It looks terrible.
Okay, well then.
I shouldn't send you.
I didn't know there was a movie coming, but it's probably bad, so oh well. So
it probably sucks.
Our world and then changing dimensions over to their world and then coming back, and then there's running around the city in our.
Oh god, that sounds terrible.
Stop.
So let me point out one other thing, because I said we talk about this as well, and we can go back to your stuff, but. There was a tweet from Hideki Kamiya for Astral Chain 2. Now, it is the anniversary for Astral Chain, and as noted in this report, the tweet is now deleted. Could Hideki Kamiya be trolling us? Absolutely, because he does it all the time. But He did say Astral Chain 2. It's the Astral Chain anniversary, and if you played Astral Chain like myself, you probably would agree that when you beat the game, there's definitely a lot more room for a sequel. And it was fairly successful, the game was. I think this is semi-realistic. I'm not saying that he was for sure teasing something. He might have been. I think he's done it in the past, but he also trolls people a lot too. So it's hard to say for sure. Actually, I would even go as far as to say it probably makes more sense that because the anniversary is coming up, he would just do that to mess with people's brains. Just because he's a troll. But I do still think that it makes sense for Astral Chain 2 to happen someday. Because...
How are the sales on that game? I know it was well received,
it sold
but...
well over 1 million.
Wasn't it up sales?
Say it again?
It definitely reached over 1 million. I'm seeing January 30th. Thanks fans for 1 million milestone reached. Yeah, it's definitely over 1 million, so it sold well enough.
Yeah, and that was a while ago, so hopefully those sales have improved over time. But I don't know if it has the evergreen status as actual first-party Nintendo games. So I don't know how much better it would have continued to sell. But still, it at least sold 1 million. So, that was... it was a pretty awesome-looking game. And I'm not saying it had a small scope, but it definitely wasn't like a big, high-budget game. So, I could see that 1 million being more than enough to have them satisfied with the overall sales there and to maybe, do another one.
For a new...
Model64 points out, did it have a cliffhanger? It was...
It totally did.
The post game sort of suggested things were fine, but there's stuff going on there that needs to be worked out.
There were so many things that they didn't answer that could be answered. Yeah. There's a lot more they could go with the story. Like the main issue of the game isn't even fully resolved at the end of the game.
And again, but even if it was, and if there wasn't a cliffhanger, if there wasn't questions left unanswered, you can still make a sequel off that. If any problems at any point in time. So that's not a thing. Again, 1.08 million by March 2020. Okay, that's more than enough. It hit number 1 in the UK. The UK that doesn't like Switch.
Right.
Like Nintendo, it's all about PlayStation. It hit number 1. This is... And that alone, it hitting number 1 in the UK alone is enough for Nintendo to take a look at it and be like, maybe we have something that hits home in the UK. Maybe we can get a better footing in there. They would go at it again.
That's an interesting point. Just to hit that market better.
To hit a market that they're struggling in? Again, how much money did Sony pay for Monster Hunter World? And how hard did they market it to get a footing in Japan?
Yeah, Japan is a bigger deal. In terms of what Monster Hunter can achieve there, but
again, they found something that works in a world where they don't have a FIFA to offer.
Yeah, I wonder if the UK would love F-Zero.
Yeah. I have no idea.
I honestly don't. You look at the charts from the UK, you're looking at FIFA. Are you looking at a bunch of PlayStation exclusives? Or I'm
gonna read off top 20 games right here
in UK.
Let's see. Call of Duty Black Ops. This is of all time. Far Cry 3, FIFA 13, Just Dance, Assassin's Creed, Hitman, Halo, Need for Speed. This Lego game. WWE 13, Skylanders, and goes on. Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, of course. Sonic, All-Stars Racing, Transformed, Super Mario Brothers, more Lego games, F1. So racing games are on here. Dishonored. So typically, I guess they're kind of casuals over there. They're like their Call of Duties and their FIFAs and their Just Dances.
Well, they're all high-selling games, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
High-selling games, but again, they're the games where... Because I remember looking at sales charts...
Not many Nintendo games, though.
Are
No, there's very few.
Horrible taste. And again, it's things that they sell well, but people...
hey, at least they got the best Far Cry out of the bunch on there.
And what I was trying to think of was Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is also on their charts quite often.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's on everybody's charts. Not in the top 20 of all time, though. Oddly enough.
I'm really surprised that sold insane. But again, they get a lot of sports. They do really well. Obviously, FIFA is like the king over there of everything. So if you have a game that you can crack at number 1 over there from Nintendo, like that means that you're probably selling hardware in that region to make that happen.
Probably.
So I feel like the job of first party games is not entirely to make money, but to make a stronger platform. Yes, they want to make money, but it's about the platform. That's why you don't see a ton of like microtransaction craziness from first parties, because they don't want to scare you away. They want to suck you into the platform, and then third parties can sell their games to you, and then you get a cut just for owning the platform.
Interesting. So let's say Astral Chain, that it's something that's realistic. It makes sense to go for it. I think we all kind of agree that it makes sense. This is not going to be revealed anytime soon. So for people 3 months from now, they're like, "Oh, Astral Chain is fake. The rumor is fake." It's not. You're not going to hear about this for a really long time if it's real, because the game came out half a year ago? No, more than that. A year ago. This is the year we're talking about it because of the 1 year anniversary. Forgive me.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a while. But maybe, towards the end of the Switch's life cycle, we see an Astral Chain 2. I think that's possible.
God, please.
Yeah.
It was my favorite game last year.
I think I like it more than Bayonetta 1. So, granted, I haven't finished Bayonetta 1.
It makes me want to play Bayonetta 1 because I haven't played very many Platinum.
Well, the problem
games.
with Bayonetta was I got stuck. So, maybe I should try to take a stab at it.
Your other problem, too, is like, you didn't know how well this was going to go off. So, I doubt they went from Astral Chain to Astral Chain 2.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, that team is probably and you're not going to have downtime while they wait and decide. So that team probably put out Astral Chain, started on another project, and then they can do Astral Chain 2. So I highly doubt we're seeing it anytime soon. It'll be at the end of the life cycle. It might not even drop in next gen.
Switch. Maybe. Could be. Man, but that game just looked amazing on Switch. Like, it looked so good. But, we can look forward to Bayonetta 3, though. That style of game, that fast-paced action kind of game, Bayonetta 3 is in the works. It's been in the works for years. You gotta think that sooner or later they're gonna show it off. So I think that's also probably a 2021 game at this point. So I guess to kind of wrap up the discussion here, because Doom, I know you have to get up early. I have to get up early.
I have to get up early.
We all have to get up early.
Yeah.
And I try to make this a 2-hour discussion, but we talked about just the direct stuff, and that was over an hour. And then we're like, all right, time to talk about Switch Revision, and that was over an hour. And now we talk about everything else, and now we're over 3 hours. So that's just where we're at. I guess. So I'll just kind of wrap up my thoughts on all this stuff that's been coming out, and then you guys can sort of tell me what you guys think. But so I think, Dumo, you've given me some hope for a Skyward Sword HD. Like, mainly, I'm not sure, like, for this year. I don't know if that means if it will come out this year. I'm not sure. I do think we're gonna get, like, first-party Nintendo news in September. Again, I'm not saying it's going to be a Nintendo Direct. I hope it is, but at this stage, with all the disappointment we've gotten and how slow Nintendo's been, I'm just going to kind of try and temper my expectations a little bit. But I do think sooner or later Nintendo has to start talking about not just this holiday period, but 2021. Like, we're getting to the stage, like, they have to start talking about next year now, not just this year. So it's strange. So I do think news is coming. I am thinking the Switch revision is real. I think it's gonna be like, I think I've been going with Switch Plus. That's what I think it'll be called. We'll see what actually happens, of course. And I do think it's gonna be like a spring 2021 kind of release. Maybe it's not March, although March makes sense to me because it can come out right at the end of the fiscal year to push more sales. And I do think Nintendo's gonna have 1 or 2 things that come out around that period that'll be big for it. My cat just scared me. I need to put you somewhere else. But I'm hoping Breath of the Wild 2 is that game. I feel like that's about enough time for it to come out, but we'll see. And then maybe this rumor about Monster Hunter is real, and we see a reveal for it this month, I don't think it'll come out this year, but if it comes out this year, that'll be amazing. I think it'll be one of those games to help push this Switch revision. And, you know, I think 2020 is going to be a really strong year. I still think the Mario remasters are real. People think it's a fake, it's a hoax, but I'll tell you this. We told you Paper Mario was coming months in advance. It came. We told you Pikmin 3 was coming in advance. It came. If we go back to last year, I told you guys like a year in advance that Banjo would be coming for E3, and that happened. You know, the Switch Lite, we told you that would happen. I was actually saying it would be called Switch Lite, and it was called Switch Lite. Now, some of this is just my prediction. Some of it is, you know, rumors that you guys have seen. Some of it's inside for information. Point is, like, we get some things right sometimes. We get some things wrong sometimes. These partner showcases have really thrown us for a loop. But yeah. I do think some of these things we've been hearing are real. I think the Mario remasters are part of that. It doesn't look like they're coming out for September unless they're announced literally tomorrow. But they could still get announced in September for the anniversary. They could talk about some different things, and then maybe it comes up for the holidays. So that's kind of my overall thoughts after this discussion about what's been going on, and, you know, maybe Astral Chain 2 comes out someday. We'll see. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I'm not really expecting a direct. Unless they have something big for early 2021 that they need to announce now. Like, if Breath of the Wild 2 maybe is launching like March, maybe they'll feel the need to do a direct to talk about that. But even then, I'm not sure. So, I'm honestly just kind of expecting trailers and maybe another, like, third-party presentation. Something like that. I'm not really expecting
partner
a full
showcase
content direct. Yeah, partner. Yeah.
But
and if they do a direct, I think it'll be... Yeah, I think if they have a direct, it will be just mostly focused on 2021, to be honest. I don't think 2020 is going to be that great. Yeah, I think 2020 is going to be like where they barely scrape by until 2021, where they show up and like, hey guys, I know 2020 kind of sucked, but you know, this year is going to be good. I don't think 2021 is going to be like the year to end all years, just because I don't want to hope for things like that, because I'll get disappointed.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be a strong year for Nintendo. And I think it'll be something that can look like, hey, I know 2020 sucked, but we got stuff coming in 2021. That's the only really reason I think see them doing a direct.
Yeah, but just one more thing I want to add. The Switch revision won't be announced until 2021. They're not going to ruin Switch sales for this year. Like, when they announce it'll be like a month or two in advance, probably 2 months in advance, maybe this January for it to come out in March or something, or if it's a little bit later. They're not going to announce it this year.
I think the new 3DS they announced like 2 months before it launched. Like, they announced that very late in the year. It came out like early the next year.
Didn't they deny it the day before they launched? They announced.
They do that with all their handheld systems. Yeah. They're just like, no, they're definitely not a new one coming. Hell no.
They're probably if there is a new system, which I don't know if there's one that's going to be worth marketing. I personally think it's going to be Silent Revision. If there is a new system and they are going to announce it, and it's going to be a Switch Plus, it's probably going to be January. It's probably going to launch late February. They'll have a big game in March to push with it, or it will launch in March with a big game. They're basically going to announce it as close as they can, while giving enough time to hype it.
Right.
In an area where they don't get sales.
Yeah. Which I think we're looking at like a 2-month really window here.
Right after Christmas. Like you basically have your Boxing Week sales, and then sales drop off drastically. And then you're gonna have a couple months, and then sales for Nintendo typically pick up somewhere around their big launch in March, because that's just how it is.
I think they do want it announced before or very soon after Christmas, though, because they want to get all those people gift cards and money after Christmas to spend it on them, because that stuff gets spent instantly, and then there's nothing, and people don't have money for things. So if you come in like January and say, hey, there's a $350 system that's launching next month, people are like, well, I just spent all my money that I got from Christmas, and my parents just spent all their money on Christmas, so now we have no money. So I think they need to announce it a little bit earlier, maybe, which, if I remember correctly, is what they did for the new 3DS. I mean, when they announced the Switch, they announced that kind of like late, but that's kind of a different thing.
We mean the new
but
2DS
with their other
XL?
revisions, yeah, the new 3DS XL, Not the new 2DS XL. I don't know when the new 2DS XL is. That's a different beast entirely from what I think the revision will be. The new 3DS XL, I believe, was announced like late in the year, and then it came out early the next year.
I mean, it's a hard call because then you're also, they have all that money and it's like, oh, well then we're not going to spend it during the Boxing Week sales because we're holding off, whereas they're hoping they'll spend then and then again later. So I don't know. It's tough. I did want to go back to Zelda real quick though.
Yep.
They want an annual release. So we can expect that there should be something Zelda this year, unless of course it gets pushed. All possible. The only thing that has the reason why I say Skyward Sword is because it's the only one Aanu talked about that isn't Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah.
He did ask if we were excited for it.
But what about that re-release for Cadence of Hyrule? Do I think that's enough to satisfy Zelda fans? Not really, because last year they had the actual release for it, and that was with Link's Awakening Remake. But, you know, I also don't think they have to stick to that rule. I think they would like to try. But if they have this 35th anniversary coming up, it's only a few months later. The pandemic probably delayed things anyway. Like, they can wait a few more months and really push things with a 35th anniversary for Zelda not too long from now. Although I want Zelda this year, so I'll take it.
They just give up their holiday lineup.
Honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if they were just
given
like,
up.
well,
They've
2020
given up August
screwed
and
anyways.
September. They've given up a
But
lot
again,
this year. It's weird.
I feel like their big hitter this year is going to have to be coming from the third party.
You know,
Because
how do you feel about the Mario remasters? I don't know how much of an opinion
I don't think
I've
that's
gotten from you on that.
it's going to be good, but I don't think that's going to be a big heavy hitter. I mean,
it's Mario. It's gonna sell like
It's gonna sell
tons.
millions.
Let's be honest. It's gonna sell millions upon millions. Just look at Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. That was a Wii U game that nobody even really like. Hardcore fans were like, we don't really want this, and then it just sold like millions and millions. It's on the top 10. It's in the top 10 of all time Switch games.
I don't know if that pushes hardware sales. Like they can sell. Like
I told you, I'm with you there.
It isn't about pushing their software sales as far as they can. It's a great chance for them to build their platform.
Because that's
platform
when
is
families
based off
buy
their hardware,
systems.
their hardware
holidays.
sales.
I'm with you there. It
I
makes sense to have at least
feel
one
like-
original game.
So my thoughts are they're going in so far with a bunch of remakes, re-releases, whatever. I don't know if Monster Hunter would be the big one for this year. I feel like that's cutting it pretty close, but possible. I still think it's possible. But I feel like these partner showcases, one of them is going to end with a massive release for this year. And I think if there is a new first-party game, I believe it's going to be Mario Kart, and my guess would be Double Dash 2. Because Mario Kart 9, well, Mario Kart 8 is still selling really well, just doesn't work.
Like if you made it like something that feels really different. I just don't think they're
like
gonna.
it has to.
Yeah.
Either
maybe.
that or they're not going to put a new Mario Kart on this generation at all, and Mario Kart 9 comes out. Either way, I think Mario Kart 9 comes out on the next platform. If they're going to do a Mario Kart specifically in this generation, I feel like it's got to be something like a Double Dash 2. It's got to be different enough that they can get the people that bought Mario Kart 8 to buy the new Mario Kart game. Because otherwise, why bother? I already have Mario Kart, and there's already, 20 million plus people playing it?
Yeah.
The online isn't going to disappear.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to be something significantly different.
I just
Does
think,
it though? I feel like there's so many games that come out that are just like iterations of each other on the same system. Like that
the thing
happens
is that Mario
all
Kart
the time.
Deluxe-
They just sell.
But
Yeah.
do they have to compete with themselves for the sale?
No, I don't think. Yeah, I agree with that
That's
part.
right.
I think it would be different. I don't think it would be a Double Dash 2. I don't think it needs to be.
the problem though is that
it'd be different
I think
enough.
Mario Kart doesn't really, in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of being like that system pusher. I feel like Mario Kart 9 or even a Mario Kart Double Dash 2 wouldn't be that, because you already have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. If
Yeah.
someone was buying a Switch for Mario Kart, they would have already done it for the most part, So I don't really. I think Mario Kart 9 could happen on Switch. It's kind of 50-50 for me because we've never seen a situation like this where Nintendo's focusing on one platform. Normally, you see 2 different Mario Karts in a generation for 2 different systems and just one per system. And we haven't gone like a dedicated one because of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So it is strange. So I'm 50-50 on it, but I don't know if they need it for this particular holiday. I feel like we would have heard something by now also. I'll take it though, don't get me wrong. But considering we haven't even gone and announced for the Mario remasters yet, it doesn't seem like September they're coming out. October already has Pikmin 3 Deluxe and the physical release for Cadence of Hyrule. So I believe that Mario remasters are probably going to be a November thing, assuming they're real, and I think they probably are. So then there's not really much space for a Mario Kart unless you shoehorn that into December. And then you also delay something like Bravely Default 2, you know? Of course, I think it's conceivable since Bravely Default 2 is more of like a second party thing because Nintendo's publishing it, but it's being developed by Square and their studios, that it could come out in October with Pikmin 3. That's conceivable. So I'm skeptical of Mario Kart coming out for this holiday. I do kind of agree with you, Dumo, that it makes sense for Nintendo to have some sort of major new release, but we've gone so close to the end of the year already and they haven't announced anything. So I'm wondering if they just kind of don't.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like they if they do, I feel like it's going to be Mario Kart. I don't think anyone could have foreseen Mario Kart 8 Deluxe selling this well for this long. Meanwhile, the studio that does Mario Kart dropped arms in 2017 and probably started working on the next Mario Kart right away.
That timing of that does place it around now.
So it does work for now or next year. It does work, and it's a Mario game. It's still Mario on the cover for an anniversary. You have the remakes, the remasters. I feel like you need some sort of a new property, and I don't know what else you're going to bring.
F-Zero.
And I don't think they're doing it.
No,
as crazy as that sounds.
No, F-Zero. I know F-Zero would be amazing, but Nintendo's not doing that for their holiday.
You know,
maybe a summer game someday, but not now. I know.
That would be like, it'd be a good one to drop it. Like F-Zero would work great in the holiday as an extra game in the holiday.
As like, you know, the second
they
or
like
third
those
title.
Those like two week apart releases that they do in the busy years. I feel like they'd be like, oh, we have like 4 weeks, 3 weeks. Oh, you know what? We're gonna shoehorn in F-Zero and it's gonna blow the roof off everything because people have been demanding it forever. But you know, like I feel like their lineup is so far, what we know of, or at least we know, is so weak. I feel like there's going to be a big third-party game. I feel like they've allowed for space for that, and I feel like a third party is going to want it. And Monster Hunter would make sense because Nintendo would spend the money on Monster Hunter, and they would push Monster Hunter huge in a year like this where there's not a lot there to compete with. It'd be huge in Japan, huge in the West. It would work. Is that the game? I don't know. I feel like it's cutting it a little close on dev time, but it's possible. But I feel like there is something coming from these partner showcases aren't just like, oh, well, we got nothing else to show, so let's just show what other people have been doing. I feel like they're going to build something with this.
I want to talk about something that's being talked about in chat right now.
Sure.
There's some discussion about who's developing Mario Kart Tour. Just a quick Google search, the developers are Nintendo, DNA, and Nintendo Entertainment. There was also a report about Bandai Namco helping out as well. Onyx, podcast. This is not your time to shine, bud. Go back down.
He's trying to get famous. Trying to get those interviews.
So, I know, I definitely, this is not what the Mario Kart team has been working on this entire time. That's not true. Onyx, down.
No, there's no way that they've been putting in 3 years.
No, they're working on a real game.
Like Nintendo, I don't believe they have actually put their first party studios on any of these mobile games. Plus they're pulling away from the mobile, as we like. There was a report on that a little while ago, I believe. They were pulling away from the mobile games to keep pushing the Switch harder instead. So I don't. No, the Mario Kart team is not working on Mario Kart Tour. They will be having someone else. So we'll probably have a mobile specific company that knows how to work with mobile, doing that in conjunction with someone that is supervising them or advising them from Nintendo. Like there will be Nintendo input. I don't think Nintendo will actually be making it, just publishing it.
Yeah.
I have no idea, but that is probably at least somewhat true.
Okay, again, like I don't have any details. Like that's just what makes sense to me. So
Yeah, well, I guess I think September could be an interesting month. Again, Jeff Grubb's saying there will be something else from Nintendo by mid-September. There is that not shareholders meeting, there's like that manager meeting, and some people are, like maybe Nintendo does something right before that. Brand, I remember there was like some sort of shareholders meeting, and you predicted that the Nintendo would have some sort of announcement before that, and you were right.
Yeah, but that was a major quarterly meeting.
This is an interesting thing. I don't know what it actually entails, so I'm not going to say for sure it means something. But considering that Mario's anniversary is on the 13th, if there is any sort of anniversary plans, you got to think an announcement will be made by then. So if we pass September 13th, then and nothing is sort of like announced for the Mario Remasters, then at that point, for all of those who are saying it's not real,
what?
I'll start kind of maybe considering
the 13th, Andres, it's a Thursday. You're just gonna get a Mario Direct. It's gonna be Mario Direct. Get you all your Mario stuff on the 13th on the anniversary itself. There you go.
Or they'll just pull a Capcom and give you a plushie.
I'll take the question.
Here's an oversized plushie. Happy anniversary.
Yellow Kazoo, hello, how are you? Yeah, we'll see. September is gonna be an interesting month, I think. I mean, I guess if we just kind of go by the rumors, right? Supposedly Monster Hunter is going to get announced this month. Supposedly the Mario Remasters will be announced this month. Supposedly there'll be some sort of Nintendo news that's an equivalent to a Direct, according to Jeff Grubb. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be like a full-scale Direct. It just means that if Nintendo has announcements to be made for this year, it'll come then. So, we'll see. We'll see. Take it with a grain of salt. We don't know. This is rumors. Do I think it makes sense? Yes. But I also would have thought it would have made sense for Nintendo to make announcements about their holiday lineup way in advance, and they haven't. So we'll see what actually happens. But it's been a fun discussion. Some stuff to hope for, at least.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what actually gets announced this month and what actually happens. There's a lot of rumors and actually going to happen.
Yeah. It's going to be probably nothing like we're expecting, as it has been the entire year.
Yeah. But anyways, guys, make sure to check out Dumo. His channel is linked in the description below, as well as Brandon's What About Nintendo. They are both linked in the description below. Yeah, so do that. Both there. You guys have anything else you want to shout out before we call it a night? No?
Honestly, I don't.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
I might stream someday, maybe, guys, if you want.
Hit the like button just to help out visibility of the podcast.
Yeah, because is reminding me, hey, to tell you guys, like the video. I would appreciate the like. That would be greatly appreciated. Very much so. But thank you all, and we'll see you soon. So take care.
See you guys.
Cool stuff, my friend.